Chapter 275. Dust and smoke swirled in the air, but with Yellow Nanxian's eyesight, she could see everything clearly. Ouyang Feng exhaled a mouthful of internal energy from his mouth and kicked backwards. His body shot out like a heavy cannonball towards Song Qingshu. Song Qingshu seemed to have a tacit understanding with Ouyang Feng, raising his palm to meet Ouyang Feng's attack. Just now, the shock waves from the collision of internal energy had left all the experts in the hall in a sorry state, but the two people in the center of the explosion didn't seem to be affected at all. As soon as they clashed, they fought back and forth, exchanging more than 10 moves. Su Quan and Fong Yi were hiding in a corner. The two women were also watching the battle without blinking. But with their cultivation, they couldn't keep up with the two people's movements. They could only see two shadows flying around, and after a few glances, they felt nauseous. However, the two women didn't look away. One was worried about her lover's safety. The other felt that her fate was already tied to Song Qingshu's, afraid that he would die under Ouyang Feng's hands. Yellow Nanxian's eyesight was very good. Although the two of them seemed to be evenly matched, she could see that Song Qingshu was gradually falling into a disadvantage. Although Ouyang Feng's attacks were slower than before, the power of each punch and kick was almost twice as strong as before. Song Qingshu had no choice but to dodge. Unfortunately, although Ouyang Feng's attacks were slow, the timing of each attack was ingenious. Song Qingshu was able to dodge 1 or 2 attacks, but every 3 to 5 attacks, he would have to face Ouyang Feng head-on. Yellow Nanxian thought to herself that the Mount Hua 5 paragons were indeed extraordinary. This Western poison was already over 50 years old, and he was a bit deranged. His strength was definitely far from his peak. But even so, his timing of his attacks, the combination of each attack was perfect. There were even some attacks that Yellow Nanxian couldn't see clearly, only understanding after a few attacks. So it was because of this attack. Because of this, Yellow Nanxian admired Song Qingshu even more. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees the game more clearly than the player. Even she couldn't understand Ouyang Feng's moves from the sidelines while Song Qingshu was in the middle of it all. Every time he was able to neutralize Ouyang Feng's attacks, she felt ashamed of her own inferiority. But now, even True J-Child and the others could see that Song Qingshu was at a disadvantage. At the beginning, they were attacking and defending, but now they were defending 8 and attacking 2. Everyone understood that Song Qingshu was just bitterly holding on. Brat, you've learned a lot of things. Wudong, a May beggar's sect. Have you learned the 9-in manual? Although Ouyang Feng was crazy, he could still clearly see that some of his opponents' moves were very similar to his. However, because one of them was practicing 9-in martial arts while the other was practicing reverse martial arts, Ouyang Feng only felt a little suspicious at first. After all, their moves were not exactly the same. But after exchanging several hundred moves with his realm, he could naturally see that many of their martial arts actually came from the same source. It's the 9-in manual. It's not that rare. Compared to when he first obtained the 9-in manual when his strength was still low, he was worried that he would be killed and robbed like the Fu Wei escort agency. The current Song Qingshu naturally had the confidence to speak bluntly. He believed that his martial arts were more than enough to protect himself. Who would have thought that when Ouyang Feng heard his words, he immediately became furious. Everyone who obtained the 9-in manual will die. All of you will die. With a loud roar, he rushed forward to attack. Song Qingshu was knocked back several feet by his palm before he managed to neutralize his opponent's strength. While he was shocked, a heroic spirit rose in his heart. Damn it, if a tiger doesn't show its might, you'll really think I'm a Hello Kitty. Finished speaking, he leaned forward and reached out to pull out the wooden sword on his back. Ouyang Feng saw that Chu Yang's hair and beard were fluttering, and he was worried that Chu Yang would have some kind of powerful move. He quickly gathered his chi in front of him and was on guard. Who would have thought that Chu Yang would actually pull out a wooden sword? Ouyang Feng immediately laughed. I thought it was something powerful, but it turns out it's just a piece of wood. Hong Antong, who was at the side, had suffered greatly from this wooden sword. He quickly reminded Chu Yang, "Mr. Ouyang, be careful of his wooden sword. There's something strange about it." Oh, although Ouyang Feng was crazy, he still had the instincts of an expert. He quickly noticed that Song Qingshu's aura had changed. It was as if Song Qingshu had become a peerless divine weapon. Ouyang Feng couldn't help but exclaim, "Sword Qi!" Song Qingshu made a hand seal and a dragon roar rang out. The wooden sword in his hand transformed into a bunch of phantom images that actually produced the sound of metal clashing against stone. Song Qingshu flipped his wrist, and the wooden sword spun 3 times around his wrist. Then, borrowing the force from the sword, it left his body and flew around his body. Li's sword technique. Song Qingshu attacked Ouyang Feng with his sword alone. Everyone was dumbfounded. What kind of technique was this? The others hadn't reacted yet, but the genius swordsman Yelu Nanxian's heart skipped a beat. Could this be the legendary highest level of swordsmanship, the imperial sword technique? But this was obviously the legendary immortal's technique. Song Qingshu naturally didn't have the ability to take someone's head from 1,000 miles away with a flying sword, but the inspiration for this technique was indeed from the imperial sword technique he had seen in movies and TV shows in his previous life. Although he didn't have the ability to control the wooden sword for a long distance, he could use qi to control the sword within a few feet of his body. After many experiments, he finally succeeded. Last time in Shengjing City, he had already experienced the baptism of battle. What kind of sorcery is this? Ouyang Feng roared in anger. That elusive wooden sword was imbued with Song Qingshu's sword qi, making it as sharp as a divine weapon. It appeared and disappeared unpredictably, attacking from all sorts of unimaginable angles. This was Ouyang Feng's first time facing this technique, so he was in a difficult situation. If it was just this flying sword, it would still be manageable. With Ouyang Feng's martial arts, although he was in a difficult situation, he might still be able to dodge it. But Song Qingshu's sword technique of Li was brilliant. Combining the different postures of the body while controlling the wooden sword, Song Qingshu had also perfectly integrated a part of the essence of the 18 dragon subduing palms into this technique. Therefore, not only did Ouyang Feng have to face the 18 dragons subduing palms head-on, he also had to guard against the sneak attacks of the flying sword. Even with Ouyang Feng's battle experience as a grandmaster, he couldn't help but be at a loss. In just a dozen moves, his body was hit several times. But his eyesight was very good, and he avoided some of the fatal attacks, so he only suffered some superficial wounds. No more fighting, no more fighting. This time I admit defeat. Ouyang Feng used all his martial arts and jumped out of Song Qingshu's attack range. He was very angry. "You little brat, if it weren't for the fact that I didn't bring my spirit snake staff with me, I wouldn't have lost to you." If Ouyang Feng was in a normal state of mind, he naturally wouldn't lower his head and admit defeat to a junior. But now, although Ouyang Feng still didn't want to admit defeat, he had no qualms about admitting defeat. Song Qingshu also understood that Ouyang Feng's nickname was Western Poison. Half of his skills lay in poison. Now that he was crazy, he naturally didn't remember to use those strange poison skills, which was equivalent to losing half of his strength. Song Qingshu remembered that in the original novel, Ouyang Feng's spirit snake staff had 2 extremely poisonous snakes on it, and Hong Qigong almost lost his martial arts after being bitten. If the sober Ouyang Feng used the spirit snake staff to fight with him, with the 2 poisonous snakes on it, he really wouldn't be able to win. But Song Qingshu arrogantly said, "A win is a win, a loss is a loss. What's the point of finding so many excuses? You're pissing me off." Ouyang Feng was furious. "You little brat, just you wait. I'll go back and think for one night, and then I'll be able to break your dog fart sword technique." Song Qingshu was shocked. He remembered that in the original novel, Ouyang Feng and Hong Qigong fought on the peak of Mount Hua. In the end, Ouyang Feng only needed one night to think and break the beggar clan's dog-beating stick technique. If he really went back and thought for one night, there was no guarantee that he wouldn't be able to break the beggar clan's Li sword technique. But very quickly, Song Qingshu came to his senses. A set of martial arts should have gone through many trials and tribulations, but he was hoping that it wouldn't be broken by his opponent. That was really the mentality of a mediocre person. If Ouyang Feng could really break my Li sword technique, then I can take the opportunity to improve the hidden flaws of the Li sword technique. Wouldn't the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? Not to mention, the technique is dead. The person is alive. There is no unbreakable sword technique. There is only unbreakable person. Ouyang Feng's method of breaking the technique was only the technique that I used today. Next time I won't be stupid enough to use the exact same sword technique. Thinking about this, Song Qingshu smiled and said, "So what if I wait for one night? What's the relationship between you and the old urchin? Just now, when you used your palm and sword, was it his mutual hand combat?" Ouyang Feng was deep in thought and suddenly asked, "I have nothing to do with him. I also didn't use my mutual hands combat." Song Qingshu was surprised and replied. Ouyang Feng coldly snorted, but in his heart he let out a long sigh of relief. If the old urchin's disciple could defeat him in everything, then he really wouldn't have the face to mingle in Jianghu anymore. Gloomily, he walked to the back of the hall, and when he passed by Hong Antong, he didn't even look at him. His mind was full of Song Qingshu's sowing discord technique just now and the method to break it. Hong Antong's face was ashen. He didn't expect that the super strong helper he found would actually be defeated by Song Qingshu. As it turned out, Hong Antong ran into Ouyang Feng by chance last time. As the Divine Dragon sect leader, Hong Antong naturally heard the rumor that Ouyang Feng had gone crazy. With a thought, he used all kinds of methods to invite Ouyang Feng to the Divine Dragon Island. Originally, he planned to use him as a secret weapon to turn the tables. Who knew that when he heard that he was the #1 under the heavens, he would actually run out by himself? What was even more infuriating was that he was actually defeated by Song Qingshu, boosting his prestige. The Divine Dragon Island was filled with poisonous snakes. Although Ouyang Feng was insane, he still felt a sense of kinship when he saw a poisonous snake. That was why he always stayed on the Divine Dragon Island. Now that he was provoked by Song Qingshu, his mind was full of thoughts on how to break Song Qingshu's sword technique. Therefore, it was likely that he would stay on the island for a short period of time. Lord Song's divine skill is matchless. Even Western poison was defeated by you. This seed admires you. Although Hong Antong hated Song Qingshu to the extreme, the situation was stronger than him. At this time, he didn't dare to have a falling out with the other party. "It seems like you just claimed to be my sister's husband. You dare to snatch this young master's woman. See if I don't kill you." Song Qingshu rolled up his sleeves, preparing to rush over again. Hong Antong was startled. He secretly complained and promptly circulated his energy to guard himself. At this time, Su Quan ran in front of Song Qingshu, pulled his arm, and said with a smile, "Little brother, you misheard. He is not my husband. Is it really like this?" Song Qingshu suspiciously looked at Hong Antong and asked. Hong Antong saw Su Quan quietly signaling him with her eyes. Just now, he recalled that Song Qingshu seemed to have been hit by the poison. He couldn't help but be overjoyed and promptly said in a bad mood, "Really?" Chapter 276. Everyone's expression became very interesting. Divine Dragon cult's people naturally didn't have the guts to show it. Blood Knife Ancestor and the others were nominally allies of Divine Dragon cult, so they were naturally too embarrassed to show it. However, True Jade Ancestor didn't have any misgivings. He laughed loudly and said, "Some people don't even dare to acknowledge their own wives, watching helplessly as their enchanting wives fall into the arms of other men. What a big turtle egg, ah." Just now, in order to stop Song Qingshu, Su Quan hurriedly pulled his arm. Although she didn't fall into his arms, their expressions were indeed quite intimate. Hong Antong was used to doing whatever he wanted in the cult, so when had he ever suffered this kind of humiliation? He was immediately enraged. He gloomily looked at True Jade Ancestor and asked, "What did you say?" True Jade Ancestor waved his horsetail whisk and sneered. "I didn't mention any names. What are some people feeling guilty about?" On the side, Blood Knife Ancestor, also spoke in a timely manner. There's no need for the two of you to fight over such a trivial matter. Let's discuss how to reply to Bao Qinhuang. After saying that, he took the opportunity to wantonly take a look at Su Quan's voluptuous body, thinking that this woman was really flirtatious and charming enough. During this time on the island, he must find an opportunity to get intimate with her. Hong Antong was bewildered. He never thought that Blood Knife Ancestor would say such a thing. His words seemed fair, but in fact, he was completely standing on true Jade Ancestor's side. Hong Antong couldn't understand. He and Blood Knife Ancestor were nominally seeking refuge with the Mongolian prince, Ali Buj, so why would the other side help an outsider like true Jade Ancestor? Hearing Song Qingshu's words, Yellow Nancian was greatly disappointed, thinking to herself, why does this Song Qingshu sound so stupid? At this time, Su Quan let out a charming laugh. This true Jade Ancestor is really awe-inspiring. However, I heard that last time in Shengjing, you were defeated by my younger brother in one move. I wonder if Taoist Elder is interested in wiping away your previous shame? I can let my younger brother accompany you to play. True Jade looked embarrassed. This was the first time he was sent flying by Song Qingshu in Ping, Shi Wang Mansion, and it could be said that he had underestimated the enemy. The last time at the banquet in Shengjing Wang Mansion, he had attacked Song Qingshu for dozens of times, but the result was that he couldn't even touch the corner of his clothes. Then, the other side made a move and stabbed him in the back of the knee. After many years of wandering Jianghu, it was not that Yu Zhenzi had never lost, but he boasted that his martial arts were superior, yet he actually lost so badly. On one hand, she was angry at Song Qingshu, but on the other hand, she was deeply afraid of him. Today, after witnessing the earth-shattering battle between him and the Western poison Ouyang Feng, he no longer dared to challenge him. Thinking up to here, true Jade hurriedly laughed, stood up, cupped his fists, and said, Lord Song's martial arts are matchless and the #1 expert of my great Qing. This humble Taoist has already admitted defeat and is sincerely convinced. In Jianghu, victory and defeat were common occurrences, and it was very rare for an expert to personally admit that he was inferior to another expert. This would often be regarded as a great shame and humiliation. But today, when everyone heard true Jade frankly admit that he was inferior to Song Qingshu, they instead felt that he was a straightforward and upright person, secretly admiring him. Su Quan's beautiful eyes shone again and again. Just now, Song Qingshu's lofty heroic bearing had left a deep impression in her heart. If not for the arrogance and despotism in his words that were different from usual, Su Quan would have suspected that the other side simply wasn't affected by her technique. Today, the hall is too chaotic. Let's temporarily shelve the peace negotiations and continue tomorrow. Hong Antong said. On one hand, he was alarmed by the ambiguous attitude of Blood Knife Ancestor and the others. On the other hand, he had a lot of questions he wanted to ask Su Quan. If the other side really controlled Song Qingshu, then his confidence would greatly increase. Everyone in the hall had their own ulterior motives, but they all tacitly agreed to this decision. Madam, send someone to arrange everyone's accommodations and then come to my room. I have something to ask you. As soon as Hong Antong spoke, he knew he was in trouble. Sure enough, when Song Qingshu heard his words, his eyes immediately widened and his voice was filled with resentment. Elder sister wants to live in the same room as me? Who do you think you are? Su Quan originally didn't want to face Hong Antong alone, so she took the opportunity to make a helpless expression at him. Hong Antong raised his head and saw that the people of the Divine Dragon cult were all bowing their heads like old monks in meditation. The experts of the other factions were all looking at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. He couldn't help but feel angry in his heart. I'll let you be happy for a few days. I won't let any of you leave this island alive. He then flicked his sleeves and left. Su Quan faintly smiled. Her gaze swept over everyone and softly said, Everyone, please follow me. Being swept by her seemingly affectionate gaze, not to mention old perverts like True Jade, Li Zhenzi, and Blood Knife Ancestor. Even an upright young man like Yalu Qi felt his blood boiling and hastily bowed his head. Bloodknife Ancestor, on the other hand, didn't feel this way. His thoughts were extremely filthy. Mother of Asterisk her. If it weren't for Song Qing-shu, I would have captured this flirtatious Madame Hong in the middle of the night and properly enjoyed myself. I don't believe that at this critical moment, even if Hong Antong knew, he would still dare to say anything. Mother of Asterisk her, Song Qing-shu, this mother of Asterisk her, has become stupid, yet he still treats her as his exclusive property. I don't know if he's really stupid or just pretending to be stupid. At the same time, True Jade was also thinking. According to my methods, I originally wanted to sneak into her fragrant room in the middle of the night, restrain her, and then run. With my lightness skill of lightning changes, even if Hong Antong discovered me, he wouldn't be able to overtake me. It's a pity that Song Qing-shu, this big devil head, is here. It looks like I have no chance with this beautiful madam cult leader. Inside the Divine Dragon cult, there were many rooms. Su Quan separated the groups of people far away from each other and arranged them in a place far away from each other. On one hand, it was to ensure peace, and on the other hand, it was to avoid any conflicts. The groups of people agreed and quickly returned to their respective rooms to rest. Meanwhile, after Yelu Nancian and Yelu Qi returned to their courtyards, they gathered together and began discussing. Xian'er, I didn't expect this Song Qing-shu to be so fierce. Yelu Nancian also nodded. Last time Su Darren fought him in Shengjing City, and when he came back, he also praised his martial arts very much. Yelu Qi enviously said, even with Su Darren's martial arts, praising him like that, it must be true. Today, I witnessed his battle with the legendary Western Poison. On one hand, Gidge thought it was wonderful, but on the other hand, I was a bit disheartened. In vain, I was proud of my outstanding innate talent. Among the younger generation of our country, other than being inferior to you, Sienna, I am already a rare young master. Who would have thought that this Song Qing-shu is only about the same age as us? I don't know how he trained his martial arts. Yelu Nancian saw Yelu Qi's disheartened expression and quickly said, Cousin, you are wrong. No matter how strong Song Qing-shu's martial arts are, he is only a sharp blade in someone else's hand. Cousin, you are a member of the royal family. What you are learning is to govern the country and bring peace to the world. In the future, you must be a person who holds a blade, not a sharp blade. Yelu Qi's expression tightened, quickly bowing to Yelu Nancian. Thank you, Sister Sienna, for your advice. I have thought it through. Yelu Nancian quickly stepped aside, smiling tenderly. How can an older brother bow to a younger sister? I don't deserve it. Yelu Qi was a young man after all. Quickly recovering, he couldn't help but ask, Sister Sienna, based on your martial arts, compared to Song Qing-shu, who is better? Yelu Nancian could be said to be a legend among the younger generation of the Liao. At such a young and beautiful age, her martial arts were almost at the level of Grandmaster. She was the dream lover of many young men. If Yelu Qi wasn't her older brother, he might have joined the ranks of her pursuers. Yelu Nancian rolled her eyes at him. It's not like you didn't see his battle with Western Poison. Even Western Poison lost. How could I be his match? Laughing awkwardly, Yelu Qi said, Sienna, you're the pride of our Yelu royal family. Big Brother naturally hopes that you could defeat Song Qing-shu. Recalling the details of the battle, Yelu Nancian smiled. In the current Liao, I'm afraid only Great King Shao and official Su have a chance of defeating him. I'm still a bit lacking. However, after witnessing this battle, I feel like I'm about to break through. I think in less than 3 years, I'll be able to fight with Song Qing-shu. 3 years is such a long time. Yelu Qi said disappointedly. But you are our royal family's #1 expert. The Jin Kingdom is our mortal enemy, and the Manchurian Qing share the same origin as them. Just thinking about how strong their #1 expert is, I feel suffocated. Hearing his words, Yelu Nancian also fell silent. That year, the Jin Kingdom almost destroyed the Liao and captured many of their concubines and princesses. Among them, the good ones were taken as concubines by the Jin royal family or the ministers, while the bad ones were banished to the laundry, forced to work as prostitutes for the army, suffering all kinds of humiliation. This disaster was even more shameful than the Song Kingdom's Jinkong, and was deeply engraved in the hearts of the people of the Liao. All of them wanted to wipe out the Jin Kingdom and wash away their shame. However, if one thought that the people of the Liao and the Song Kingdom were in the same boat, they would be wrong. The second most hated person in the Liao was not the Manchurian Qing, but the Song Kingdom. 100 years ago, the Song Kingdom and the Liao became brothers. Although the Song Kingdom had to contribute coins every year, the Liao also kept their promise and did not invade the Song Kingdom. Who would have thought that when the new Zhen rose in power, the Song Kingdom's incompetent and treacherous officials would take advantage of the situation and secretly form an alliance with the Jin Kingdom to divide up the Liao? The Emperor of the Liao sent messengers to the Song Kingdom's officials several times to emphasize their 100 years of brotherhood, and also to explain the benefits and disadvantages of the two countries. Who would have thought that the Song Kingdom's officials would be blinded by greed, and in the end, they sent their troops and the new Zhen to attack the Liao from the north and south, resulting in the country's destruction. At that time, Yilu Nanxian was still an infant, and her mother was kidnapped by the Jin Kingdom. Even now, her whereabouts were unknown. Yilu Nanxian's eyes were glistening with tears, and after calming herself down, she said, "Let's not talk about this for now. Cousin, don't you think Blood Knife Ancestor's attitude today was strange?" Chapter 277. That's right. I really don't know what the Mongolians are thinking. Yilu Nanxian stood up and stretched lazily, revealing her youthful waist, as well as her full bosom, causing Yilu Qi to awkwardly avert his gaze. Before coming here, I thought Brother Aliber sent Blood Knife Ancestor and Songjia to help Hong Antong, but it doesn't seem like it. Yilu Qi said in confusion. Do you think Brother Aliber sent them to cause trouble? Yilu Nanxian frowned. Probably not. Yilu Qi said uncertainly. Divine Dragon Island is a great force to contain the Manchurian Qing. The Manchurian Qing has become Mongolia's greatest enemy. The two countries have been at war for years. The Mongolians have no reason to give up on Divine Dragon Island. Wait, what did you say? Yilu Nanxian suddenly had a flash of inspiration. I said the Mongolians have no reason to give up on Divine Dragon Island. Yilu Qi repeated the previous sentence. Yilu Nanxian asked excitedly. The Manchurian Qing has become Mongolia's greatest enemy. The two countries have been at war for years. Xianair, what did you think of? Yilu Qi asked. That's the problem. The two countries have been at war for years. Yilu Nanxian felt her thoughts clearing up. Do you remember that the Mongolians and the Manchurian Qing had a truce? I think so. Both sides had their own victories and defeats. They couldn't do anything for a while, so they called a truce. This is very normal. Fighting and stopping and then fighting again. What's wrong with that? Yilu Qi didn't take it to heart. According to Tai Xi's investigation, the Manchurian Qing's Hong Li has always wanted to be the emperor, and Kangxi has always been wary of this powerful prince. It's just that the Mongolian army has been pressuring the border for so many years that the two reluctantly came to an agreement. Yilu Nanxian said. Yilu Qi was not an idiot, and he soon had an idea of what was going on. Are you saying that the Mongolians stopped the war because they were waiting to reap the benefits? Yilu Nanxian nodded. That's right. This truce will last for a long time. They were waiting for Hong Li and Kangxi to start fighting. Who knew Hong Li's son would be killed at this time? Whether in public or in private, Hong Li will avenge Fu Qinggan, but in this case, the date of Hong Li and Kangxi's war must be postponed. Yilu Qi's eyes lit up, and he continued, the Mongol Khan Temujin is already old, and Ali Bug is one of the princes who has the highest chance of becoming the Khan. Zulwu is like a hot knife through butter in the far west, and Kublai's achievements in the Central Plains are also very impressive. If Ali Bug can't show the corresponding results, then his future is not looking good. That's right, Yilu Nanxian said. If we can destroy the powerful Manchurian Qing with this great merit, in the future the position of Mongolian Great Khan will belong to Ali Bug. Perhaps Brother Ali had an expert by his side to guide him, so he could put aside his immediate interests and stop fighting with Hong Li. First, he will wait for the Manchurian Qing to have internal strife, and then he will reap the benefits. Yalu Qi frowned and said, "The Mongolians are really full of talents. Even a prince has such a master by his side." The two of them marveled at the ingenuity of this move. They never thought that the so-called master was just something Wei Xiaobao made up to save his own life. But Wei Xiaobao was naturally quick-witted, and his eyes were also sharp. By a fluke, he managed to move Audiobook. Although Audiobook can temporarily stop fighting, if he keeps raising an army of hundreds of thousands, he probably won't be able to hold out for long. Yalu Nanxian, who was also born as a nomad, understood that the Mongolian soldiers lived by raiding. If they didn't fight and just kept grazing, the soldiers wouldn't be able to bear the hardship. As time went on, the various tribes would put pressure on Audiobook. At that time, even if Audiobook didn't want to send out troops, he would have no choice but to do so. So when Audiobook found out that Hong Li didn't wait for the right time to start fighting with Kangxi, but instead mobilized a large force to attack Divine Dragon Island, he naturally couldn't sit still. But the Mongolians also understood that Divine Dragon Island killed Hong Li's most beloved son, so they definitely wouldn't let it go. At the same time, they were worried that Hong Li would waste too much time on Divine Dragon Island, so they sent Blood Knife Ancestor and the others over. On the surface, it was to help Hong Antong, but in reality, it was to help Hong Li take down Divine Dragon Island as soon as possible. If Audiobook was here and heard all of this, watching Yalu Qi and Yalu Nanxian, two young people, talking and analyzing the current situation of the world and his goals so clearly, he would definitely have a look of disbelief on his face. But why didn't the Mongolians inform us? Yalu Qi asked doubtfully. Why would they inform us? Yalu Nanxian sneered. Although the Mongolians are our great Liao's allies in name, they aren't a country after all. Naturally, they would be on guard. But what should we do next? Yalu Qi felt like his head was about to explode. Lord Su sent us here, other than secretly protecting Divine Dragon Island's sect leader's wife. He didn't give us any specific task. We came to help Divine Dragon Island because of the Mongolians. But now, on the surface, the Mongolians are helping Divine Dragon Island. But in reality, they're helping Hong Li. So, which side should we stand on? Yalu Nanxian thought for a moment, then made a decision. We'll do the opposite. On the surface, we're helping Divine Dragon Island, but in reality, we're helping Divine Dragon Island. After all, the Mongolians are also helping Divine Dragon Island. Since they didn't inform us, we'll pretend we don't know. I'm afraid that's not a good idea. Yalu Qi hesitated for a moment, then said, no matter what, if it weren't for the Mongolians, our great Liao would have been destroyed, wouldn't this? Yalu Nanxian stared at him for a moment, then helplessly shook her head. Cousin, Siener knows you're always kind and generous, like a gentleman. But we're the imperial family. We can't look at things from the perspective of ordinary people. Yes, our great Liao is indebted to the Mongolians. But look at the world now. The Mongolians are like a mountain pressing down on all the countries in the Central Plains. If they easily destroy the Manchurian Qing, then it won't be long before they unify the world. At that time, what should our Liao do? Yalu Qi bitterly smiled. Logically, I know what to do, but emotionally, I just don't want to make certain choices. All right, I also understand that letting the Mongolians waste their time in the quagmire of war with the Manchurian Qing is in the best interest of our great Liao. So, we can't let Hong Li break through Divine Dragon Island so quickly and then fight with Kangxi. And when we return to Shanjing this time, I'll think of a way to explain to His Majesty the stakes. We can't let His Majesty be misled by those guys in the court. Last time in Shangjing, we were lucky that we didn't succeed in framing Kangxi and Hong Li. Otherwise, if Kangxi and Hong Li really fought, we would fall into the Mongolians' trap. Yalu Nanxian thought for a moment, then continued. Yalu Qi awkwardly said, actually, we can't blame them. At that time, we didn't know what Alabuji was planning. We thought that framing Kangxi and Hong Li would cause tension between them, so that they wouldn't have time to help Wu Sangui, who knew that Alabuji's plan was so good. He actually wanted Hong Li and Kangxi to go to war. Yalu Nanxian also knew that at that time, no one in the court saw this clearly. If it wasn't for Alabaji being impatient and giving himself away on Divine Dragon Island, Liao would still be in the dark. Thinking of this, Yellow Nancian couldn't help but feel scared. The two were silent for a while. Then Yellow Cheese suddenly thought of something, said, Sienna, why do you think Official Sue wanted us to protect the Divine Dragon cult leader's wife? Official Sue's surname is Sue. That cult leader's wife is also surnamed Sue. Do you think it's? Don't talk nonsense. Official Sue is a chitin. That cult leader's wife is obviously a Han. How could they be related? Even so, Yellow Nancian still didn't understand why Sue Een would give them such a strange order. How about this? I'll go to Song Qingshu's place first. Isn't Su Quan also there? As Yellow Nancian spoke, her tone couldn't help but become strange. This cult leader's wife didn't return to her husband's place, but was with Song Qingshu. After Song Qingshu's group returned to their own courtyard, Fong Yi couldn't help but ask, Madam, why didn't I see the young princess this time? Su Quan's expression was also not good. Answered, I just asked the cult members, in order to fight the invading enemy. Many of the cult's people were sent to the nearby islands, forming a triangle with the main island. I'm afraid Mu Jianping is also among them. The young princess martial arts. Her martial arts are low. In the battle, she will definitely be in danger. Fong Yi was confused. You don't need to panic. The battle hasn't started yet, right? Su Quan snorted impatiently. What I'm worried about is why the people who were sent out are all my trusted followers. Could it be that cult leader wants to make a move on Madam? Fong Yi was startled. Do you still need to say that? Su Quan rolled her eyes. If it wasn't because I realized this, why would I throw away my reputation and live with Song Qingshu in front of so many people? Madam, did you do something to Song Dage? Fong Yi hesitated, but still gathered her courage to ask. Fong Yi originally thought that she would be vague, but Su Quan openly admitted, yes, he was hit by me. Then he will be like this from now on? Fong Yi looked at Song Qingshu sitting foolishly to the side, picking at his nails in boredom, and her heart couldn't help but tighten. Why are you so concerned about him? Su Quan suddenly smiled ambiguously. What? After a night of being husband and wife, you've tasted the sweetness. Fong Yi hurriedly waved her hand awkwardly. No. How's he in bed? As soon as the words came out, Su Quan was startled. She didn't expect that she would actually ask this kind of question. However, with her usual flirtatious attitude, Fong Yi didn't feel that it was abrupt, but she was still ashamed and didn't know how to answer. So she could only say, he's okay. Su Quan couldn't help but pout, thinking that this woman was really dishonest. She even lied about this kind of thing. That night, she listened outside the window for so long that her legs went soft. If that was the case, then it was okay, but there weren't many men in the world who could do that. However, Su Quan misunderstood Fong Yi. Fong Yi didn't have experience with other men, and her knowledge in this area was like a novice. Naturally, she didn't know what level Song Qingshu was. Although she felt that he was very powerful, she was too embarrassed to say it. Chapter 278. Because the scene in his mind was too unsuitable for children, True Jade's breathing quickly became heavy, alarming Su Quan inside. Who is it? True Jade was startled and hastily retreated. He raised his horsetail whisk to knock away the hidden weapons that were like maggots in tarsal bones. When he saw Su Quan rush out, he promptly said, Boundless deity, Madam Hong has good kung fu. So it's you ox nose. True Jade kept saying that he was going to bring Su Quan back to Hong Li. So Su Quan was naturally disinclined to give him a good expression. True Jade's smile froze. He originally thought that the other party would feign ignorance, but who would have thought that the other party would be so heartless? For a moment, he stood there awkwardly. You didn't come so late to secretly capture me and bring me back to Shengjing, did you? Su Quan leaned to the side, teasing him while secretly guarding against a sudden attack from the other party. True Jade glanced at Song Qingshu behind her and said with an embarrassed smile, Madam must be joking. This poor Taoist was merely acting on orders. I hope Madam can understand. Su Quan impatiently interrupted him. If you have something to fart about, then say it. True Jade didn't expect that the always smiling Su Quan would speak so crudely. His complexion couldn't help but turn somewhat unsightly. He snorted. This poor Taoist has something to discuss with Darren Song. Oh, then come in. After Song Qing-shu finished speaking, he returned to the room first, leaving Su Quan to stare at his back in a daze. Darren Song, you also saw the situation this afternoon. True Jade paused and looked hesitantly at Su Quan, looking as if he wanted to say something but was hesitant to do so. Su Quan was currently walking on a tightrope, so she naturally wouldn't be so tactful as to avoid him. Song Qing-shu also said, if you have something to say, then say it. Elder sister isn't an outsider. True Jade thought to himself, she's clearly Hong Antong's wife. So when did she become your wife? Besides, the topic of this conversation revolved around her, so it was naturally inconvenient for her to hear. Seeing the expressions of the three people in the room, waiting for him to continue, Yu Zhenzi thought that in any case, Divine Dragon Island handing over Su Quan was just a pretense, so it didn't matter if he let her hear it. Song Darren, Divine Dragon Jiao has always had rebellious intentions. We've already found out that Hong Antong has long sought refuge with Mongolia's Ali Buj. You and I are both ministers of the Great Qing. This is a great opportunity to show our loyalty to the imperial court to eradicate the divine dragon cult. I hope Darren Song will lend a helping hand. Loyalty to the imperial court? Song Qing-shu smiled non-committally. Prince Bao has many soldiers and generals. Now that the army is pressing down on the border, why would you need my help? Darren Song must be joking. True Jade secretly broke into a cold sweat. Although this humble Taoist martial arts are far from being on par with Darren's, I reckon they'll have no problem dealing with Hong Antong. But this time, the Mongolian and Khitan have sent their experts here. If we really fight, this humble Taoist two fists will find it difficult to fight against four hands. I don't believe that with Prince Bao's intelligence network, he wouldn't know the situation of the Mongolian and Khitan experts. Besides, Taoist priest Qin Gong is outstanding. If you're on guard, even if those people join hands, they won't be able to hold you back. Song Qing-shu said. Chapter 277. Sun and Moon Divine Sword. True Jade forced a smile and said, originally, this humble Taoist wasn't worried. If I entered the tiger's den alone, after I successfully returned, my status would certainly rise with the tide. Unfortunately, this humble Taoist didn't expect that Western poison Ouyang phone would be on the island. Song Qing-shu looked at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. Taoist priest wants me to help you deal with my elder sister? As soon as he finished speaking, he reached out and embraced Su Quan's slender waist. Su Quan was caught off guard and fell into his embrace. For a moment, she didn't know what was going on with Song Qing-shu, but she didn't dare to struggle. True Jade looked over and saw Su Quan obediently lying in Song Qing-shu's embrace. Her tender and beautiful cheeks were flushed red, adding to her charm. He thought to himself, I'm definitely going to wear Hong Antong's green hat. Looking at their relationship, if I use the imperial court's righteousness to pressure him, I'm afraid that little fox Song Qing-shu won't buy it. True Jade already had an idea in mind. He opened his mouth and said, Darren Song has misunderstood. There's something that's supposed to be extremely confidential, but Darren Song is one of us. Madame Hong is Darren Song's woman, so naturally, she's also one of us. In that case, there's no harm in telling you. Hearing True Jade say that she was Song Qing-shu's woman, Su Quan's whole body trembled. However, she wanted to hear the secret from his mouth, so she gave up on opening her mouth to refute. On the side, Fani looked at the two people's intimate appearance, and her heart was filled with jealousy. I won't hide it from Darren. His Highness's declaration that as long as Divine Dragon Cult hands over Madam Cult Leader, he will immediately withdraw his troops is nothing but a pretense. After True Jade finished speaking, he paid attention to the two people's expressions. Sure enough, as soon as Su Quan heard this, her expression changed. On the other hand, Song Qing-shu was expressionless, and he couldn't see any clues. Jie, do you want to hear it? Song Qing-shu smiled as he looked at Su Quan in his arms. Su Quan's face turned red, and she let out an end sound. However, she was inwardly bewildered. He doesn't look like he's hit the jackpot. Since Jejia wants to hear it, then for her sake, I will protect you on the island. Song Qing-shu lightly said. Thank you, Darren Song. True Jade was overjoyed and quickly explained. His Highness predicted that Divine Dragon Cult wouldn't hand over Madame Hong, and he never really wanted Madame Hong. He just wanted to use this opportunity to cause internal strife in Divine Dragon Cult, so that His Highness could win without a fight. Prince Bao's vision is quite accurate. Originally, Divine Dragon Cult was united in dealing with Sheng Jing's sex army, so it's not certain who would win. However, after being played like this, the higher-ups of Divine Dragon Cult have their own ulterior motives, and the people at the bottom are also panicking. Su Quan coldly snorted, but in her heart, a big stone was lifted. As long as the other side's real target was not her, it would be easy to handle. She could only hate the short-sightedness of the 5 dragon envoys. She didn't know what was going on, but Hong Antong unexpectedly had the idea of sacrificing herself. True Jade smiled, but didn't say anything. He wasn't afraid to tell the other side everything. Prince Bao's move was an open and above-board plot, so it didn't matter even if Divine Dragon Cult understood it. People's hearts were the most unpredictable. There would always be people who held onto a sliver of hope. After this period of effort, the morale of the people on the island had almost collapsed. This humble Taoist will take his leave, lest someone with ulterior motives find out that I'm not here. All right. True Jade slightly saluted and then left. Song Qing-shu, are you really stupid or just pretending to be stupid? As soon as True Jade left, Su Quan broke free from Song Qing-shu's embrace and nervously stared at him. Her eyes bloomed with a strange light. Sister, what do you think? Song Qing-shu's pupils suddenly turned pitch black. A trace of confusion flashed across Su Quan's face. Suddenly, she sweetly smiled. Of course you're still my good brother. Good boy, my shoulder is a bit sore. Help me massage it. Song Qing-shu patted his shoulder and said, Okay. Su Quan obediently knelt on the bed and gently massaged his shoulder. He stared dumbfoundedly at all this, and then cried out in surprise, Big brother Song, you're not Shu. Song Qing-shu made a shushing gesture. Don't say it out loud. When Su Quan had used it on Song Qing-shu that day, he had already sensed it. However, firstly, he didn't know the depth of Su Quan's cultivation. Secondly, competing in mental energy was an extremely dangerous matter. If he wasn't careful, it would end with one side becoming an idiot. Song Qing-shu didn't want this result, so he pretended to be under her control. After a period of time together, Song Qing-shu had already figured out Su Quan's power. Taking advantage of her absent-mindedness, he took control of her. You big scoundrel, you actually made me so worried. Fawny couldn't help but hug him and continuously beat his chest. Song Qing-shu saw that she was crying like a pear blossom in the rain. It was rather pitiful, and he couldn't help but lower his head to kiss her. After a moment of surprise, Fong-yi slowly closed her eyes. Only her slightly trembling eyelashes could reflect their owner's mood. There's a legend that when people are happy, their tears are sweet. When they are sad, their tears are bitter. It seems that you're still happy most of the time. Song Qing-shu didn't kiss her rosy lips. Instead, he stuck out the tip of his tongue and licked the tears hanging on her cheeks. Tears are obviously salty. Fong-yi finally smiled through her tears and quickly reached out to wipe the tears on her face. The two of them said some sweet words for a while. Fong-yi suddenly sat up straight. Big brother Song, I want to do something. What? Song Qing-shu was stunned. Fong-yi came behind him and slapped Su Quan's face. She raised her hand and wanted to slap the other side of her face, but Song Qing-shu had already firmly grabbed it. What are you doing? Song Qing-shu frowned and looked at her. This past year, I've been bullied by this woman many times. I've also been slapped many times. Fong-yi said indignantly. What? I only slapped her once, and you're already distressed. Song Qing-shu's heart was filled with disgust. As a woman, Fong-yi's vengeful personality was really hard to like. Not to mention, her tone right now was like a jealous girlfriend. It was also quite annoying. Noticing the change in his expression, Fong-yi also cursed inwardly. She knew that her impulsiveness had ruined everything. Fang Yi knew that before she received enough love, she shouldn't show this side to Song Qing-shu. Chapter 277, Sun and Moon Divine Sword. But seeing Su Quan standing in front of him without any resistance, he couldn't suppress the impulse in his heart. Big Brother Song, I'm sorry. When I think about the things that happened in the past, I can't help it. Fang, he said weakly. Song Qing-shu smiled. What's in the past is in the past. I won't let her bully you in the future. And Fang, he lightly leaned against his chest. Lord Song, you have a lot of women on your left and right. You really have good luck with women. Song Qing-shu raised his head and saw Yelu Nanxian leaning against the door, looking at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. Silently cursing True Jade for not closing the door after leaving, Song Qing-shu stood up and asked, Miss Yelu, it's already so late, yet you're still wandering around. Aren't you afraid of getting into the wrong bed? Hey, even though the grassland women were usually generous, they couldn't withstand his direct teasing. Yelu Nanxian's face turned red, rebuking. I came here this time to have a match with you. I never hit women. Song Qing-shu refused without even thinking. What if it's me who hits you later? Yelu Nanxian purposely provoked him. Although your martial arts aren't bad, you still can't beat me. Song Qing-shu shrugged his shoulders nonchalantly. I know, but I still want to have a match with you. This time, Yelu Nanxian didn't argue. Instead, her tone was very sincere. Oh, Song Qing-shu's interest was finally piqued. If I remember correctly, your Liao and Qing are still at war. Aren't you afraid I'll take this chance to kill you? If it was someone else, I wouldn't take this risk, but since it's Lord Song, I'm not afraid. Yelu Nanxian said. She understood that although she couldn't beat Song Qing-shu right now, being able to exchange blows with an expert of this level would be very beneficial to her martial arts progress in the future. Why? Song Qing-shu was surprised. Yelu Nanxian suddenly smiled brightly, like a flower blooming on the grassland. Because Lord Song Qing-shu is a man who has tender and protective feelings for women. Fine, I'll fight you. Song Qing-shu laughed and walked out the door with her. Do we fight here? Yelu Nanxian didn't attack. Instead, she asked lightly, where else should we fight? Song Qing-shu was puzzled. I've heard that Divine Dragon Island has beautiful scenery. Lord Song, do you have the mood to accompany me around? We can fight while enjoying the island scenery. Yelu Nanxian's hands were clasped behind her back. Her unsheathed sword was held casually in her hand. A light breeze blew by, giving her a sense of otherworldly beauty. Brother Song, be careful, it might be a trap. Fang Yi said worriedly. Before Song Qing-shu could speak, Yelu Nanxian laughed. With Lord Song's martial arts, it should be me who should be careful. Little lady, are you worried about your brother Song's safety, or are you worried that I'll steal your man? Finishing speaking, she didn't wait for a reply. With a light tap of her foot, she floated out like a fairy. Fang Yi was so embarrassed that she couldn't even raise her head. Chapter 277, Sun Moon Divine Sword Song. Qing-shu hurriedly comforted her. Don't worry, I'll be right back. Finished speaking, she also flew out. Not long after, Yelu Nanxian's figure stopped on top of a tree. Looking at her standing on the soft branch, as if she couldn't bear any weight, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. In the past, Goddess Luo walked on water, her stockings stirring up dust. But now, Miss is walking on green leaves. It's no less impressive. I can understand that you're complimenting me, but I'm from the prairie. I don't know any gods from the Central Plains. Yelu Nanxian said lightly. Seeing Song Qing-shu's surprise, Yelu Nanxian smiled. All right, I was just kidding. Song Qing-shu wanted to say something else, but suddenly a flash appeared in front of him. A long sword appeared in Yelu Nanxian's hand. The long sword gleamed with a cold light, as if she was holding a pool of autumn water. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but praise. Good sword. Since your martial arts are higher than mine, I'll make the first move as a sign of respect. Finished speaking, Yelu Nanxian's temperament suddenly became very solemn. A dragon's roar sounded, and the sword in her hand turned into a ball of white light. Song Qing-shu no longer underestimated her. Among all the sword masters he'd met, Other than Feng Qingyang, Yellow Nanqian's swordsmanship was the best. Song Qingxu had never seen such a dazzling swordsmanship. Her opponent seemed to be taking full advantage of the moonlight. What she was holding in her hand was no longer a sword, but a ball of dazzling shadow. Although Song Qingxu knew many martial arts, his greatest attainment was still in swordsmanship. After being baptized by the essence of the 5 great mountain swordsmanship in the Repent Cliff, in addition to the many times he'd fought with Feng Qingyang, he had almost reached the realm of returning to his natural state. The originally ordinary 5 great mountains swordsmanship, when used by him, was no less powerful than the solitary 9 swords. The reason for this was that although every move of Song Qingxu's was similar to the 5 great mountain swordsmanship, he didn't rigidly adhere to the original moves, but instead slightly changed the angle of the sword according to the actual situation, or purposely slowed down the speed of the sword, making it so natural that the enemy couldn't block it. But even so, Song Qingxu still had a hard time dealing with Yellow Nanqian's swordsmanship. The main reason was that the sword in Yellow Nanqian's hand was too dazzling, so dazzling that Song Qingxu couldn't even open his eyes. Naturally, he couldn't break it. After using his profound martial arts to force her back, Song Qingxu asked in shock, "What swordsmanship is this? It doesn't have a name. I created it myself." Yellow Nanqian pointed her sword to the ground, stopping her attack. "If it was during the day, under the blazing sun, wouldn't your swordsmanship be heaven-defying?" Song Qingxu asked with lingering fear. "Lord Song's eyes are as sharp as a torch. My swordsmanship does make use of natural light. But although the sun is strong during the day, the environment is bright, it's not as dark as it is now. Only the moonlight is more powerful." Yellow Nanqian said softly. Her expression was one of fascination. "I have a feeling that when I practice this swordsmanship to the extreme, it will be like the moonlight shining down on the world. My enemies won't be able to hide. Unfortunately, my current cultivation level is still far from that level." Song Qingxu was taken aback. The indescribable aura that the other party was exuding made him feel a little uneasy as well. But then he suddenly thought, so what if you're a rare genius? Can the halo of a genius surpass the halo of a transmigrator? Thinking like this, Song Qingxu's heart calmed down. "I don't know if it was just my imagination, but just now I felt like taking your life was as easy as flipping my hand." Yellow Nanqian frowned, clearly not understanding what just happened. Unfortunately, that feeling has disappeared. Song Qingxu didn't mind, smiling. "I'm sure Miss can't bear to kill me. You're quite narcissistic." Yellow Nanqian didn't get angry, instead sheathing her sword. "Let's stop here for now." "Oh, I didn't expect your cultivation to be so profound. You can even hear people coming from so far away." Song Qingxu looked at her with admiration, thinking to himself, could this be the legendary genius beauty? Yellow Nanqian paused, a little awkwardly saying, "I didn't hear anything, I just don't want to fight anymore." "Then let's hide for a while." Song Qingxu hid among the branches, beckoning Yellow Nanqian to come over. Yellow Nanqian floated over, frowning in confusion. "If we work together, there shouldn't be anyone on this island that we need to hide from, right? Relying too much on martial arts isn't a good thing." Song Qingxu smiled faintly, not intending to explain further, instead saying, "Since your swordsmanship doesn't have a name, how about I give you one? Let's hear it. I don't want something too ugly." Yellow Nanqian asked curiously, "Since your swordsmanship contains the spiritual energy of the sun and moon, let's call it the Sun-Moon Divine Sword." Song Qingxu thought of the TV series Sword of Sun and Moon that Zhang Weijian and Guijinan had acted in his previous life, and then thought of Qiu Jingjing in it. Song Qingxu revealed a nostalgic expression. How long had it been since he thought about his previous life? He hoped that by using these little tricks, he would be able to leave traces of his past life in this world, so that he wouldn't think of it as a dream in the future. Sun-Moon Divine Sword? Yellow Nanqian paused, slowly nodding. "I hope I won't sully the 2 words Divine Sword in the future." Chapter 279. Both of them were dressed like red-robed llamas. One of them had a shiny, bald head, while the other had his sleeves fluttering in the wind. It was obvious that he had lost an arm. Naturally, they were Blood Knife Ancestor and Songjie Shi. Should we follow them and take a look? Yellow Nanqian's main purpose for coming out this time wasn't to compete with Song Qing-shu, but to gather information. Just what I was thinking. Song Qing-shu exchanged a smile with Yellow Nanqian. The two of them leaped up and silently followed behind the two of them. Song Qing-shu's movement technique was without a doubt. He had the chance to compete for the title of #1 under the heavens. Who would have thought that Yellow Nanqian's movement technique would be so exquisite as well? Not even the sound of clothes fluttering in the wind could be heard. Blood Knife Ancestor and Songjie arrived at a courtyard. They vigilantly turned their heads to look back before gently locking the wooden door in a certain pattern. Not long after, a series of rhythmic noises came from inside. The wooden door opened, and the two of them cautiously walked in. Song Qing-shu pointed at the roof of the courtyard. Yellow Nanqian nodded in understanding. Song Qing-shu picked up a handful of stones and threw them at the door. Hearing the noise, the guards inside quickly ran out to see what was going on. Taking this chance, the two of them flew over the guards' heads, hiding on the roof. "May I know why the two grandmasters are looking for us?" A familiar voice came from below. Song Qing-shu thought for a moment and realized the voice belonged to one of the Divine Dragon cult's 5 dragon envoys. Yellow Nanqian lightly lifted a piece of tile and was about to look inside when Song Qing-shu noticed her jade-like slender fingers, sending a voice transmission to her. "Miss Yellow, please don't let your beautiful hands get calluses because of sword practice. That would be a real waste of God's gift." Yellow Nanqian glared at him and ignored him, carefully observing the situation in the room. Because she had carefully read the information of the Divine Dragon cult's upper echelon before coming to the island, she had a general idea of the situation. 5-3 of the 5 dragon envoys were Blue Dragon Envoy Su Xueting, Black Dragon Envoy Zhang Danyue, Red Dragon Envoy Wu Jin, and the White Dragon Envoy had always been vacant. The Yellow Dragon Envoy had a close relationship with the cult leader and his wife, the 3 of them acting so solemnly. Most likely they were up to no good. Naturally, the Yellow Dragon Envoy Yin Jin was excluded. What do the esteemed envoys think of the Divine Dragon cult's current situation? As soon as Songjie said this, the 3 Divine Dragon envoys' expressions immediately softened a bit. Songjie was obviously a big shot on the same level as Hong Yantong, but his tone was extremely respectful to the 3 of them. The cult situation will naturally be the cult leader's concern. There's no need for us brothers to worry about it. Su Xueting was not only one of the 5 dragon envoys with the best martial arts, he was also a level more shrewd. You are the Divine Dragon cult's founding elders. Your status is aloof. How could you have no right to ask? Blood Knife Ancestor chuckled. Having his sore spot poked, Black Dragon Envoy Zhang Danyue indignantly said, "In recent years, the cult leader has been promoting the younger generation without restraint, killing the old ones of the past. We should be thanking the heavens and earth for being the 5 dragon envoys. How could we dare to interfere in the cult's affairs?" "That's exactly what I was waiting for." Blood Knife Ancestor, Conspiracy Under the Moon Ancestor, and Songjie exchanged glances, hurriedly said, "Now that the 3 armies of Prince Bao and Hongli are bearing down on the border, the Divine Dragon Island is on the verge of collapse. What are your plans?" The two of them were quite knowledgeable. Obviously, the outcome of the battle was still unknown, but they gave the 3 envoys a psychological hint that the Divine Dragon cult would be defeated. Sure enough, when the 3 envoys heard their words, their faces turned pale. They looked at each other in dismay. For a moment, no one opened their mouth. "I heard from Shengjing's sect that as long as we hand over the culprit, Su Quan, they will immediately withdraw their troops. What do you think about this?" Songjie's chubby face revealed a smile, looking like a harmless person and a harmless animal. Red Dragon Envoy Priest Wugen laughed a few times. "Shengjing is like an arrow on the bowstring. They have no choice but to release it. How could they withdraw their troops just because of a woman? If the Divine Dragon cult doesn't hand over Su Quan, the hope of Shengjing withdrawing their troops is naturally 0. But if they hand over Su Quan, there is still a glimmer of hope for them to withdraw their troops. Why don't you advise your cult leader to try? There's no harm in sacrificing a woman. That's all. With cult leader Hong's status, it's not difficult for him to find a wife as beautiful as a flower in jade, Songjia said with a smile. The three of them already had this idea in their hearts, but no one dared to bring it up first. Hearing Songjia's words, Su Shiwedding sneered. Cult leader Hong loves Su Quan very much. How could he bear to part with her? This is cult leader Hong's fault. How could he put the entire Divine Dragon Island in danger for the sake of one person's personal interest? Bloodknife Ancestor looked indignant, but his mind was actually very dirty. At this critical moment for the Divine Dragon cult, if Hong Antong offered his charming wife to everyone, he could guarantee that the Divine Dragon cult would be filled with chicken blood, and everyone's morale would be high. Is the cult leader? What can he do? Su Shiwedding pretended to sigh, but he was secretly paying attention to the other party's change. Songjia smiled mysteriously. What if Hong Antong is no longer the cult leader? The three envoys were startled, but they maintained their composure and said, The two of you and cult leader are both disciples of Prince Ali Buj of Mongolia. Why do you say such words? Bloodknife Ancestor smiled strangely. Prince has always been dissatisfied with Hong Antong's selfishness and disobedience. He has long wanted to get rid of him, but unfortunately, he never had the chance. In fact, the three envoys had already met several times to discuss how to deal with Hong Antong. But first, they were worried about his superior martial arts, and second, they were worried about the Mongolian forces behind him. Hearing Bloodknife Ancestor's words, Zhang Danyue couldn't help but ask, could it be that we have the chance now? The fish had taken the bait. Songjia was delighted and quickly explained, It's like this, although we have always wanted to get rid of Hong Antong. This is, after all, an internal matter of the Divine Dragon Island. If we personally take action, I'm afraid it will cause a strong backlash from the Divine Dragon Island, and if we rely on the Manchurian Qing, it will be a big problem. However, if the three respected 5 dragon envoys take action, the impact will be reduced to the minimum. But now, Shengjing's army is pressing on the border. Su Shiwedding was still relatively cautious, worried that after this turmoil, the Divine Dragon Island vitality would be greatly damaged, and they might not be able to resist the foreign enemy. Don't worry. As long as you can successfully replace him, our Lord will immediately send troops to Liaodong. The Mongolian cavalry is famous all over the world, and Hongli will naturally call back the army to resist us, Bloodknife Ancestor said. What do you want in the end? Su Shiwedding asked doubtfully. Hong Antong is disobedient, so we naturally need an even more obedient cult leader. Songjia smiled, the fat on his face jiggled, but in his heart, he was thinking, You fools, what we naturally need is the Divine Dragon cult to fall apart, so that Hongli can have a decisive battle with Kangxi as soon as possible. The three envoys exchanged glances, and Su Shiwedding had a plan in his heart. After we successfully kill Hong Antong, in terms of martial arts and qualifications, the position of cult leader will definitely belong to me. As long as I can get the backing of Mongolia, what does it matter if I have to suffer a bit? Moreover, if I become the cult leader, if I really want to do something, what can the Mongolians do to me? Seeing that the other 2 envoys were still somewhat hesitant, Su Shiwedding opened his mouth and said, In recent years we, the 5 dragon envoys, have been constantly suppressed by Hong Antong, and our power is not as great as before. At most, we can only control 30% of the island's strength, so we definitely can't fight head-on. The only feasible way is to take advantage of Hong Antong's unpreparedness in the main hall tomorrow to execute the operation. As long as Hong Antong is dead, we naturally have a way to control the entire Divine Dragon cult. Taoist priest Wugen said hesitantly, Based on Hong Antong's martial arts, I'm afraid the 3 of us are not his match. You 3 can rest assured, we will lend a hand at that time, and Hong Antong will not be able to escape this calamity. Bloodknife Ancestor narrowed his eyes, but in his heart, he sneered, When the time comes, we will wait for you to fight to the death, and it will be best if Hong Antong kills all of you. Then, we will seize the opportunity to kill Hong Antong and the high-level troops of the Divine Dragon cult will be annihilated, and Hongli will naturally be able to attack without any effort. But right now, there is still Western poison Ouyang Feng on the island, as well as Madam Leader's subordinate, Song Qing-shu. These two people's martial arts are too high. If they help Hong Antong, I'm afraid, Su Xueting said worriedly. On the roof, Song Qing-shu heard them talking about him, and immediately became interested, listening carefully. Don't worry, we already have a way to deal with them. Bloodknife, Ancestor, and Songjia looked at each other, then laughed complacently, clearly having a card up their sleeves. After listening for a while, seeing that they couldn't hear anything else, Song Qing-shu and Songjia sneaked out of the courtyard. How do you think they're going to deal with me? Song Qing-shu racked his brains for a long time, but still didn't think they could pose any threat to him. Yalu Nancian smiled faintly. Could it be that Lord Song has forgotten about me? Song Qing-shu was startled, but quickly smiled. It won't be you. What, do you think I don't have the ability to deal with you? Yalu Nancian was a little angry at his disdain. The only way you can deal with me is with your beauty. Seeing Yalu Nancian's almond-shaped eyes widen, he quickly said, Of course, from your swordplay. I know you're not that kind of person. Despicable person. I'll take that as a compliment. I won't bicker with you. Yalu Nancian's eyebrows were not as thin as those of Jiangnan women, but rather bright and thick, perfectly matching her radiant complexion. Actually, it was because I saw that they didn't take you with them that I realized that they were also guarding against you Liao people. Song Qing-shu probed, intentionally or unintentionally. Yalu Nancian didn't fall for his trick, calmly saying, We're just putting on a show because we're allies. Lord Song doesn't need to worry about me and my cousin. She hesitated, but in the end didn't tell her analysis to Song Qing-shu. After all, they all had their own masters. Liao and the Manchurian Qing were still warring countries. I'm going back. Do you want to see me off? Song Qing-shu turned to look at her. Yalu Nancian was speechless. Although I don't know much about Chinese culture, I do know that it's usually a man who sees a woman off. I fought a boring fight with you, so it's fair for you to see me off. Song Qing-shu said matter-of-factly. Yalu Nancian hesitated for a moment, then remembered that her main mission was to protect Su Quan, so it was good to see her now. She nodded, saying, Okay. This time, it was Song Qing-shu's turn to be surprised. Originally, he was just saying it to make her angry and leave so he could secretly search for the antidote for the leopard embryo tendon changing pill. He didn't think she would actually follow him. Chapter 280. Before I saw your lifeless eyes and crazed words, I thought you were under some kind of demonic spell. Along the way, the two of them were silent. Yalu Nancian was here to gather information. Naturally, she didn't want to go back just like that. Others laugh at me for being crazy. I laugh at them for not seeing through me. Song Qing-shu didn't plan to explain, directly laughing and brushing it off. Which side does Lord Song intend to help? Yalu Nancian didn't want to beat around the bush, directly asking. Whichever side my good sister is on, I will help. Song Qing-shu answered. Su Quan, is it? Yalu Nancian pondered. If that's the case, then we aren't enemies. What? Song Qing-shu looked at her curiously. Yalu Nancian smiled faintly. Nothing. May I ask if Miss has ever been married? On the way, Song Qing-shu couldn't find anything to say, so he just blurted it out. No. Yalu Nancian stopped, looking at him calmly. What, are you interested? I don't think you have a chance of becoming the main wife. Song Qing-shu shook his head. If Miss doesn't mind, you could be a concubine. Of all the girls in the world, 9 out of 10 would be angry hearing your words. Unfortunately, I'm the last one. Yalu Nancian answered. You're a young girl. You should laugh when you want to, get angry when you want to. It's not good for you to act like an old man. Song Qing-shu's expression was quite disdainful. Maybe I'm more mature than others. Yalu Nancian didn't mind, smiling faintly. What is your relationship with Divine Dragon Islands, madam? After a while, Yalu Nancian asked. Relationship between a man and a woman. Song Qing-shu smiled. What? Miss also cares about these trivial matters of the mortal world. I'm just asking. Yalu Nancian's face was as calm as still water. No emotions could be seen. Before they knew it, The two of them had already returned to Song Qingshu's residence. Su Quan and Fong Yi had been waiting anxiously for a long time. Seeing him return, their faces lit up with joy. "You really want to be the stallion of our grassland," Yelu Nanxian suddenly said. "Thanks for the compliment," Song Qingshu replied nonchalantly. "Madam Hong, the current situation on the island is extremely unfavorable to you. Have you not considered quietly leaving?" Yelu Nanxian couldn't help but ask when she saw Su Quan. "Divine Dragon Island is my home. Even if I leave, where can I go?" Su Quan was obviously taken aback, but he still replied politely. "This Lord Song Qingshu's official career is flourishing. His residence in Yinjing City should be big enough. Madam can go to his place to lie low for a while. I believe Lord Song would welcome this. Is that right, Lord Song?" Yelu Nanxian looked at Song Qingshu with a subtle expression. Although Su Quan was hurt by Song Qingshu, she had already recovered. However, in the end, there was still a mark left in her heart. Unconsciously, she was very close to Song Qingshu. Hearing her words, Su Quan said, "Chet does not dare to trouble my good brother. It would be best if we can solve the problem here. Since Madam thinks so, then I won't say anything more." Yelu Nanxian felt that this trip was very fruitful. She said with satisfaction, "Lord Song, I won't disturb your rest any longer. Farewell." Finished speaking, she didn't wait for the three to reply and turned to leave. "Fong Yi, you go out first. I have something to say to Song Qingshu." Seeing Yelu Nanxian leave, Su Quan's expression became cold. Originally, Fong Yi thought that it was time for her to become the master. But seeing that Song Qingshu didn't seem to have any objections, she could only sadly bow with clasped hands. "Yes." After Fong Yi closed the door, Su Quan glared at Song Qingshu. "Stinking brat, did you do something to me?" "Sister, as a woman, don't you know if a man has ever done anything to you?" Song Qingshu said, amused. I didn't mean that." Su Quan's voice choked, hesitating for a moment before saying, "Have you ever fallen for me? Do you want to hear the truth or a lie?" Song Qingshu spread out his hands. Su Quan's expression changed, finally helplessly said, "A lie." Song Qingshu smiled as he approached her, slowly reaching out his hand. Su Quan's body trembled, but in the end, she didn't react. Taking her in his arms, Song Qingshu gently said, "My good Jiejie, no matter what, I will stand behind you and support you." Su Quan's expression changed again. In this short period of time, she had actually considered a lot. Su Quan was no longer a little girl full of fantasies about love. The things she considered were very practical. She understood that her life was hanging by a thread. Her only hope was Song Qingshu. Since Song Qingshu didn't want to expose her, she was happy to play the role. Leaning in his arms, Su Quan unexpectedly felt a trace of dependence, absent-mindedly saying, "Good little brother, Jiejie is actually very naive. Don't lie to me. Don't worry, I'm not the same as Hong Yantong. Husband and wife are birds in the same forest, flying apart when disaster strikes. This saying doesn't apply to me." Song Qingshu moved his head closer to her lips. Su Quan subconsciously shrank back, but Song Qingshu's hand firmly held her. Seeing that she couldn't avoid it, Su Quan silently sighed and slowly closed her eyes. As the two lips came closer and closer, a heart-wrenching cry suddenly came from outside. "Darren Song, save me!" The two of them suddenly woke up, and Su Quan immediately pushed him away. Black lines appeared on Song Qingshu's face. He had already recognized this was True Jade's voice and felt that his footsteps were particularly panicked, so he promptly opened the door to see what was going on. He saw that the crown on True Jade's head had been thrown somewhere, his hair was disheveled, and he cut a sorry figure. "Darren Song, quickly save me!" When True Jade saw him, he acted as if he had met his savior and promptly hid behind him. Song Qingshu was just about to ask him what was going on, but before he could say anything, he stopped because he already knew what was going on. He saw a middle-aged man with disheveled hair also rushing over. It was Western Poison Ouyang Feng, who had competed in the martial arts competition during the day. "Darren Song, quickly save me. Hong Yantong sent Ouyang Feng to kill me. True Jade said in a panic from behind him. Song Qingshu frowned. He had just promised to protect True Jade, so if you were to leave him alone at this time, True Jade would definitely lose his life. Seeing Song Qingshu, Ouyang Feng was also startled, but then he laughed heartily and said, "It's good to see you. I've been racking my brains for several hours, and I've already broken through your sword technique." Song Qingshu was terrified, but he sneered, boasting shamelessly. "Won't you know if you try?" Ouyang Feng didn't waste words and directly attacked with his palm. Now that things had come to this, it was impossible for Song Qingshu to stay out of this matter, so he could only win. True Jade, who was at the side, saw this and quickly escaped. At this time, Ouyang Feng's attention was completely focused on Song Qingshu, so he naturally didn't care about him escaping. Although Song Qingshu noticed it, he was similarly helpless. In the blink of an eye, Song Qingshu and Ouyang Feng had already exchanged dozens of moves. Taking advantage of the gap, Ouyang Feng angrily said, "If you don't use your sword technique, you won't be my opponent." Song Qingshu knew that he was speaking the truth, so he had no choice but to use his own unique skill, the separation sword technique. However, he wanted to test Ouyang Feng's depth, so his moves were almost exactly the same as before. Ouyang Feng laughed heartily, and his body rolled on the ground. Although he looked to be in a sorry state, he was able to avoid the trajectory of Song Qingshu's sword technique every time. Without the threat of the sword technique, Song Qingshu immediately fell into a disadvantage. As expected of Western poison, Song Qingshu secretly praised. Thinking of how Ouyang Feng broke the beggar sex dog beating stick technique that had been passed down for hundreds of years, he also felt that it was natural. Since then, his sword no longer followed the old pattern, and each time he simply moved like an antelope hanging its horn. "Huh!" Ouyang Feng cried out in surprise, and the two immediately changed their offensive and defensive positions. However, after a few hours of thinking, Ouyang Feng was no longer in a sorry state like when he first encountered the separation sword technique. Although he gradually fell into a disadvantage, he could rely on his decades of experience to maintain a situation where he was not defeated. The movement of the two's attack and defense was very big, and the space needed to move and dodge was even bigger. Very soon, the courtyard was no longer suitable for fighting. The two of them fought back and forth, and coincidentally fought into the dense forest. Suquan was worried about Song Qingshu's safety, so she quickly followed. Fang Yi also wanted to follow, but her martial arts were too poor, and not long after, she lost track of the three of them. Wherever the two of them passed, the Gangqi scattered in all directions, causing sand and stones to fly, and trees to break. Hearing such a big movement, it was unknown whether they were worried that they would be caught in the crossfire or something else, but everyone else on the Divine Dragon Island appeared. Of course, at this time, Song Qingshu was completely focused on dealing with each move and did not have the mind to pay attention to this. Up until now, the two of them had probably fought for hundreds of moves. Song Qingshu admired Ouyang Feng's martial arts foundation very much. Every time he felt that the opponent could not avoid it, but he was always able to use all kinds of strange methods to avoid it, and the following counterattack was also very sharp. Song Qingshu had learned a lot of different things, but the most profound one was the Nine Manual. There were a lot of words in the manual that he clearly knew, but when put together, he did not understand what they meant. Because of his special talent, although he was able to quickly master the Nine Manual by reading it once, he was powerless when it came to things that involved experience. Fighting with an expert of Ouyang Feng's level, Song Qingshu finally comprehended some profound mysteries of the Nine Manual. "Good little brother, this madman's martial arts is too high. Quickly think of a way to stop fighting." Suquan anxiously shouted from not far away. Song Qingshu was immersed in a kind of wonderful state. How could he be willing to stop? After Ouyang Feng went crazy, he was also a martial arts fanatic, and it was rare for him to see an expert like Song Qingshu, so naturally he would not easily stop. "It's you." Suddenly, Ouyang Feng angrily glared at the forest not far away. Song Qing-shu vigilantly looked in that direction, only to see a black shadow flash by. Ouyang Feng angrily roared and hurriedly chased after it. Song Qing-shu was surprised. He did not think that Ouyang Feng would actually abandon him like this. Out of curiosity, he also followed. Su Quan did not have time to stop him. Anxiously stamping her feet, she could only follow the two's footsteps. "Where do you think you're going?" Ouyang Feng's voice was like thunder. The escaping black-clothed person's body paused for a moment, and Ouyang Feng immediately caught up to him. The two of them exchanged a palm strike, and the black-clothed person let out a muffled groan. It was obvious that he had suffered internal injuries, but using the force of the palm strike, he fell into a cave. Ouyang Feng did not think and chased after him. Song Qing-shu originally had some misgivings, but thinking that there was no one on the island with martial arts that could threaten him, he also followed. Chapter 281. Su Quan knew that the Spirit Serpent Cave was a forbidden area of the Divine Dragon Island. It was full of traps and danger. Although Song Qing-shu's martial arts were high, it was not impossible for him to fall into a trap. There was always a torch in the cave, so it was not difficult to see. Su Quan carefully moved forward. She had only entered the Spirit Serpent Cave a few times, but usually it was Hong Antong who led the way. After all, it was safe to choose the route. However, looking at the traces on the road, Song Qing-shu and Ouyang Feng had obviously run into some side roads. There had always been a rumor in the Divine Dragon sect that those who entered the Spirit Serpent Cave would die. It was fine on the main road outside, but in this kind of secret path, the danger would definitely increase. Su Quan hesitated for a while. She understood that if something happened to Song Qing-shu, without his protection, her fate would not be any better. At this time, the sound of fighting came from afar. Listening to the sound, it seemed like two super experts were fighting. Su Quan was worried that something would happen to Song Qing-shu, so she hurriedly followed the sound. "Ouyang Feng, are you crazy? There are traps everywhere. If we continue to fight, I'm afraid we will die together." Hearing Song Qing-shu's voice, Su Quan just turned a corner and felt her eyes suddenly open. In a spacious hall, Song Qing-shu's figure flipped up and down, dodging the hidden weapons that were shot from all directions. At the same time, he had to deal with Ouyang Feng's punches and kicks. The situation was very dangerous. Su Quan looked carefully. Those hidden weapons were shot from all four walls. There were caltrops, steel needles, hard crossbows, and even pitch-black poison. "Ha ha ha!" Ouyang Feng's long laughter shook the hall. "All those who want to fight with me for the 9-yin manual must die. Who wants to fight with you for the 9-yin manual?" Song Qing-shu was shocked and angry. The two of them chased the black-clothed man, but in the blink of an eye, the black-clothed man disappeared. When the two of them reached the hall, they saw a golden box on a stone platform at the end of the hall. There were 4 big words engraved on it. Although the distance was quite far, the two of them were still able to see the words clearly. The words were 9-yin manual. As soon as Ouyang Feng saw these words, he went crazy and suddenly launched a sneak attack on Song Qing-shu. Fortunately, Song Qing-shu was already prepared, so he did not die in confusion. Song Qing-shu thought about it and realized that he had probably fallen into someone's trap. Everyone in Jianghu knew that Ouyang Feng had lost his mind after practicing the 9-yin manual in reverse. The mastermind must have wanted to use the 9-yin sutra to get rid of him through Ouyang Feng. Because Ouyang Feng was already a madman, he was unable to listen to reason. What was originally a very obvious plan became an unsolvable plot. Song Qing-shu also noticed Su Quan. Seeing that she wanted to come over to help, he quickly stopped her. "Don't come over, there are traps everywhere." Ouyang Feng looked towards the source of the voice and saw a charming young woman standing not too far away. A terrifying image appeared in his mind, and he immediately clutched his head and cried out in pain, "Huang Rong, Guijing, I don't want to see you, I don't want to see you." Song Qing-shu was stunned. He understood that he had used the 18 dragon subduing palms, and with Su Quan beside him, Ouyang Feng had mistakenly thought that they were Guijing and Huang Rong husband and wife. Song Qingshu also did not want to take advantage of the situation. With a leap, he flew to Su Quan's side and said with lingering fear, "Luckily you appeared. Otherwise, if we were to continue fighting with this madman, we would have died together. 90 manual, 90 manual, with a 90 manual, I'm not afraid of them." Ouyang Feng muttered to himself as if he had gone crazy, his eyes fixed on the box in the distance. "Be careful, it's a trap." Just as Song Qingshu said this, Ouyang Feng rushed over like an arrow released from a bow. There was a long and narrow passageway between the two of them and the box. The walls were densely packed with black holes, and from time to time a strange sound could be heard, causing one's scalp to go numb. Ouyang Feng came to the front of the passageway and laughed disdainfully. "When I was playing with poisonous snakes, you were still wearing diapers." After saying that, Ouyang Feng swaggered into the black hole. Sensing someone's aura, a swarm of venomous snakes emerged from the black hole. However, Ouyang Feng paid them no heed. His throat issued a series of strange syllables, and the snakes obediently retreated like pets. The two people behind him were dumbfounded. "Good little brother, let's quickly leave this place." Su Quan felt uncomfortable staying here, and quickly pulled on Song Qingshu's arm and said, "Wait first, I want to see what kind of tricks they have prepared." Song Qingshu knew that the box would not contain the 9-in manual, but he had already warned Ouyang Feng before, but Ouyang Feng did not care. "Ha, I finally obtained the 9-in manual." Ouyang Feng had just obtained the box, and while laughing wildly, he could not wait to open it. Suddenly, a golden light flashed, and Ouyang Feng's laughter stopped. Song Qingshu looked carefully, and it turned out to be a colorful poisonous snake biting Ouyang Feng's hand. Ouyang Feng roared and grabbed the poisonous snake's weak point, killing it with his palm. However, this poisonous snake was very powerful, and in just a short time, Ouyang Feng's lips had already turned black. In fact, if Ouyang Feng was sane, this kind of small trap would not be able to harm him at all. Unfortunately, after going crazy, his vigilance was greatly reduced, and so he fell into the trap. However, Ouyang Feng was, after all, the Western poison, the ancestor of poisons. Although he was not sane, his instincts were still there. He sealed several acupoints on his body, protecting his heart, and then flipped over, using one hand to support himself on the stone platform. He made a strange posture and began to silently circulate his internal energy to force out the poison. 5-color divine dragon. Seeing the colorful poisonous snake on the ground, Su Quan's lips trembled and her face turned pale. Ouyang Feng is finished. There were thousands of poisonous snakes on the Divine Dragon Island, but the king of poisons was the 5-color divine dragon. The cruelest punishment of the divine dragon sect was 10,000 snakes biting the heart, and the other was this 5-color divine dragon. The victim was poisoned by the 5-color divine dragon, and after the poison broke out, his flesh and blood would be in a desperate situation. Therefore, the entire divine dragon sect from top to bottom would change color upon hearing the name of the 5-color divine dragon. Song Qingshu could not bear to see a grandmaster of a generation die like this, but he had never studied poisons, so he could not help even if he wanted to. He could only place his hope on Ouyang Feng's reputation as the Western poison and hope that he could save himself. "This matter is full of strangeness. Let's go out first." Song Qingshu had a bad feeling in his heart. This 5-color divine dragon was obviously targeting Ouyang Feng, so there was no reason for it to let him go. Could it be that they were so sure that Ouyang Feng could kill him? They were careful all the way until they reached the entrance of the cave. Looking at the closed big stone door, Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. Good things don't come true, but bad things do. Su Quan hurriedly looked around and finally said with a sobbing voice, "It has been locked from the outside. The big stone door of the Spirit Serpent Cave weighs more than 10,000 jin, and because it is difficult to move, these 2 doors have never been closed for so many years. It's like the broken dragon stone in the tomb of the living dead." Song Qingshu criticized in his heart. Standing in front of the stone door, he said to Su Quan, "Step back. I'm afraid of hurting you." Seeing that Su Quan had hidden, Song Qingshu slowly used his qi and used the most powerful move of the 18 dragon-subduing palms. The arrogant dragon shows remorse. In a flash, he used the arrogant dragon shows remorse again. The power of the two palms combined was like an avalanche, but he still did not relax. He used the arrogant dragon shows remorse again, which was the three-layered waves of the dragon he imitated. No one in Wallin could take the power of the three palms directly. With a loud bang, the whole cave seemed to shake, and the sand and dust on the surrounding walls fell, but the big stone door did not move at all. Song Qingshu was shocked by the counterforce from the stone door. His hands were extremely numb, and he was afraid that he would not be able to use the second palm in a short time. Su Quan's face was ashen. She shook her head and said, "It's impossible to break this stone door from the inside. It's all my fault for being careless just now. Why didn't I guard against this move before coming in?" Song Qingshu carefully checked the joint between the stone door and the wall beside him and murmured, "That's not necessarily true. You have a way?" Su Quan's eyes lit up. "I have a vague idea, but I still need Ouyang Feng's help. I hope he hasn't been poisoned to death." Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. If Ouyang Feng was really poisoned to death, then he would probably be trapped here until he died. At that time, his only hope was to see if Feng could find this place and open the stone door from the outside. However, since the other party had set such a big trap, naturally, they would not let Feng get close to this place. Because of the trembling just now, many of the torches in the cave had fallen to the ground, and the surroundings immediately darkened. Su Quan was worried that she might accidentally trigger some mechanism, so she hurriedly moved to Song Qingshu's side. Feeling Su Quan's body tremble slightly, Song Qingshu thought to himself, "Life and death are the hardest things for people to see through. If I hadn't died once, I probably wouldn't be so indifferent now that I'm in a desperate situation." Chapter 280. Trapped in a desperate situation. Although Su Quan was usually awe-inspiring in the Divine Dragon sect, in the end, she was just a young lady in her early 20s. Thinking of this, Song Qingshu allowed her to hold his arm. Using the green dragon's absorption of water, Song Qingshu sucked a torch from the ground into his hand and held it in front of him to light up the path. With his other hand holding Su Quan, they went to search for Ouyang Feng. Perhaps because she was too worried, Su Quan didn't notice that her soft breasts were right on top of Song Qingshu's elbow. Feeling that soft touch, Song Qingshu couldn't help but smile bitterly. He didn't want to take advantage of Su Quan like this, but he knew that if he reminded her, she might feel awkward, so he could only be happy and conflicted. This erotic interlude eased the last bit of anxiety in his heart. The two of them came to the hall just now. Ouyang Feng was still standing upside down on the stone platform in that strange posture. Song Qingshu wanted to help him, so he decided to go there first. Hearing his thoughts, Su Quan insisted on going with him no matter what. "Don't forget, I'm the wife of the Divine Dragon Sect's leader. Later on, I have a way to deal with the snakes in that tunnel." Song Qingshu thought that it was true, so he decided to bring her along. First, he struck the surrounding walls with his palms. Feeling the wind from his palms, the remaining hidden weapons also shot out. "I don't believe that you can refill the ammunition automatically." Song Qingshu smiled disdainfully. In his previous life, he had come across some information about ancient tombs. He knew that these kinds of mechanisms were one-time use. Even if someone refilled them, it would be impossible to refill them in a short period of time. If these mechanisms existed in ancient tombs that were hundreds or thousands of years old, then it wouldn't be a big deal. Hundreds of years was enough to corrode the mechanisms. Chapter 282. Su Quan pursed her lips and smiled. Suddenly, the room was filled with spring. No one paid attention to the remaining fear on her face. "I don't know Ouyang Feng's snake-controlling technique, but I have this." After saying that, she took out a sachet. Song Qingshu took it and smelled it. Even the fragrance of a woman could not cover the strange smell. "What's inside?" Su Quan's face turned red. She quickly snatched it, opened the sachet, poured out some powder, and smeared it on Song Qingshu's body. "This is realgar powder. There are poisonous snakes everywhere on the Divine Dragon Island. The people in the cult rely on this to protect themselves. How could I forget this? Song Qing-shu was overjoyed. Those slippery and poisonous snakes were disgusting. It was better not to touch them. The two of them walked towards Ouyang Feng step by step. As Su Quan walked, she sprinkled realgar powder in front of her. The entangled vipers seemed to have encountered something extremely terrifying, and they all shrank to the corner of the wall. Soon, there was an empty path in front of them. Ouyang Feng sensed the two of them approaching and suddenly opened his eyes to stare at them vigilantly. He was at a critical moment in forcing out the poison. If Song Qing-shu was next to him, it would be as easy as flipping his hand to take his life. Although Ouyang Feng's mind was in a mess, he still had his instincts for danger. Soon, large drops of sweat appeared on his forehead. Ouyang Feng, don't worry. I have no intention of harming you. I'm here to help you expel the poison. Noticing Ouyang Feng's abnormality, Song Qing-shu quickly clarified. He did not want to harm Ouyang Feng instead of saving him. Ouyang Feng? Ouyang Feng was using all his strength to expel the poison. In addition, he was standing upside down. His blood rushed to his head. His chaotic mind suddenly had a trace of clarity. When he heard Song Qing-shu call his name, Ouyang Feng's heart skipped a beat. He felt that he had found something important to him. He was about to think about it when he suddenly had a splitting headache. After hearing Ouyang Feng's miserable scream, Song Qing-shu was startled. Could it be that his sudden appearance had frightened him and caused him to go berserk? He did not have time to think about it. He quickly went to Ouyang Feng and sealed several of his acupuncture points. When Song Qing-shu noticed that his strength was as weak as cotton, he realized that Ouyang Feng had practiced the 9-yin manual, which Huang Rong had modified and had already circulated his meridians in reverse. Do you have any antidote on you? Song Qing-shu looked at Su Quan anxiously. There are, but none of them can cure the poison of the 5-color divine dragon, Su Quan said hesitantly. We're just trying everything we can. Hurry up and bring it over. Song Qing-shu spread out his hand and took the few pills that Su Quan took out and stuffed them into Ouyang Feng's mouth. Song Qing-shu circulated the Zhen Qi in his body according to the holy light scripture, and the energy in his hands became warm, helping Ouyang Feng digest the medicine. Su Quan looked at the smoke above their heads and knew that they were at a critical juncture. She was worried that Song Qing-shu wouldn't be able to save Ouyang Feng, but she was also worried that Ouyang Feng would recover and attack Song Qing-shu. So she put her hands deep in her bosom and quietly held a few secret weapons to guard herself. Wow! After a long time, Ouyang Feng spat out a mouthful of black blood. It was as thick as ink, and it stank to the extreme. What a powerful poisonous snake! Ouyang Feng slowly opened his eyes and said tiredly, Of course, the 5-color divine dragon is the treasure of our divine dragon cult. Although Su Quan was in a delicate situation in the cult, she was still proud of the power of the 5-color divine dragon. If it weren't for the fact that I didn't bring any pills with me, this little poison wouldn't be able to do anything to me. Ouyang Feng snorted in disdain. Ouyang Feng made a name for himself as the Western poison. Not only was he good at using poison, but he was also good at detoxifying. However, detoxifying usually required a certain amount of medicine to achieve twice the result with half the effort. Just relying on internal energy to detoxify the poison was really limited. If it weren't for the fact that Ouyang Feng had been in contact with poison for a long time and his body already had a certain level of resistance to poison, plus his toad skill and 9-yin inverse skill, which were both good at detoxifying, once he was poisoned by the 5-color divine dragon, no matter how strong his internal energy was, he would still be dead. However, the 5-color divine dragon was after all not an ordinary creature. The Western poison's ability could only barely control the poison in his body. He wanted to force the poisonous blood out of his body, but he didn't have the ability to do so. Fortunately, Song Qing-shu was lucky and gave him a lot of antidotes. Although the antidotes were not the right ones, the Western poison's ability was able to cleverly use the principle of drug resistance to gain a chance to breathe and finally force the poison out of his body in one go. Don't be so smug, old poison. We've all been plotted against. Now the exit is blocked by a stone door that weighs tens of thousands of pounds. I need your help. Hearing the words, old poison, a trace of anger flashed in Ouyang Feng's eyes. However, he quickly concealed it and snorted. I heard that Lin Xiaoying's Tomb of the Living Dead had a broken dragon stone that also weighed tens of thousands of pounds. Even Wang Chongyang and Lin Xiaoying couldn't open it. I'm afraid the two of us don't have the ability to do so. Although the martial arts of those two are high, their brains aren't very good. It's just a stone door that weighs tens of thousands of pounds. I have at least 2 ways to get out. Song Qingshu said calmly, as if it was not a difficult matter. However, she didn't know if Song Qingshu was bluffing Ouyang Feng. However, when she thought of the desperate situation just now, she was panicking while the other party was so calm. Even with Su Kuanyan's charming personality, she couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. What method? Tell me. Years ago, Ouyang Feng was lured into the ancient tomb by Li Macho and had a great battle with her master. Although he was heavily injured, he was afraid that the ancient tomb sect would put down the broken dragon stone and perish together. Therefore, he took the opportunity to retreat. Hearing that Song Qingshu had a method to deal with the broken dragon stone, he was naturally interested. Song Qingshu had just opened his mouth when he suddenly made a sound of surprise. He raised his head and carefully looked at Ouyang Feng. Ouyang Feng was sitting on the ground. Although his clothes were still tattered and his hair was messy, he didn't look as sloppy as before. As he sat there casually, he had the aura of a great master. A strange look flashed in Song Qingshu's eyes. He asked in surprise, "Old mister, have you regained your consciousness?" Hearing Song Qingshu's words, Su Quan was shocked. She tightened her grip on her hidden weapon. Ouyang Feng casually glanced at Su Quan. Su Quan immediately felt as if her whole body was being struck by lightning. That pressure made Su Quan release her hidden weapon and fight to the death. Sensing the abnormality between the two, Song Qingshu took a light step and stepped between the two. Su Quan immediately felt the pressure on her body disappear without a trace. Ouyang Feng shifted his gaze and laughed. "Why aren't you calling me Old Poison anymore? This nickname is only given to Old Mister's close friends. I wouldn't dare to be rude." Song Qingshu changed his way of addressing Ouyang Feng. There wasn't a trace of awkwardness. "Old beggar." Ouyang Feng fell into a nostalgic expression. However, he quickly recovered and snorted. "Your martial arts are clearly no weaker than the 5 greats of the past. Why do you have to lower yourself and call yourself a junior?" Song Qingshu laughed awkwardly. He thought that it was all because he didn't understand Ouyang Feng's temperament. If they were to fight again because of a disagreement, although he wasn't afraid, it would be too unfair. Ouyang Feng had been muddle-headed for more than 10 years. Now that his mind was clear, he couldn't help but be in a good mood. Seeing that Song Qingshu didn't speak, he suddenly became interested and continued. "Although my mind wasn't very bright before, there are some things that I can see and remember." In the younger generation, those who could be called top experts are the Liao dynasty Xiaofeng and the Ming dynasty Zhang Wuji. In recent years, you've been a new force to be reckoned with. However, those who were defeated by you before, except for Monk Fangzheng, the rest can't be considered experts. I thought that your title of Manchurian Qing's #1 expert was just an undeserved reputation. I didn't expect that after these 2 fights, your martial arts are not below mine. Strictly speaking, Ouyang Feng was slightly at a disadvantage in these 2 fights. However, Ouyang Feng had regained his sanity and his former arrogance had also been restored. His ability was naturally not comparable to that of his insanity. He was able to agree that Song Qingshu was not below him, which was already a very high evaluation. On the other side, Su Quan was somewhat dissatisfied. Although she and Hong Antong appeared to be united, but at heart they were divided, the dignified Divine Dragon Sect leader had shaken Liaodong for decades. How could Ouyang Feng say that he was not even a master? However, on second thought, compared to the 2 people in front of her, The gap in martial arts between her nominal husband and the two people in front of her was indeed quite big. She couldn't help but feel a little discouraged. Mr. Ouyang, you flatter me. Previously in the martial arts competition, Senior relied on his instincts to fight. At most, he could only use 70 to 80% of his strength. Even I couldn't beat Senior, let alone now. Ouyang Feng's image of a martial arts fanatic was too deep in Song Qingshu's heart. He didn't want to arouse the other's desire to fight again, so he had to admit defeat first. You have too many worries in your heart. To be able to practice martial arts to this level, I have to say it's a miracle. Ouyang Feng could more or less guess Song Qingshu's thoughts. He couldn't help but frown and said, "Did you think I was praising you just now?" Huh? Song Qingshu couldn't help but be a little speechless. As a peerless master, you don't have the arrogance of a peerless master. You have too many worries about gains and losses in your heart. Inevitably, your words and actions are a little wretched. Ouyang Feng said with some contempt, "Is it really that serious?" Song Qingshu said gloomily, "Our martial arts are clearly on the same level, but you have so many worries in your words, as if you're afraid of offending me. I really don't know what you're afraid of." Ouyang Feng rolled his eyes at him. "Right now, we're in a dangerous situation. I'm just worried that I'll accidentally offend Mr. Ouyang and cause an unnecessary fight." Song Qingshu felt a little embarrassed by Ouyang Feng's words and tried to explain himself. "You've offended me. Whether or not I want to fight you is something that I should consider." Ouyang Feng paused and couldn't help but smile. "Your martial arts are so high and I don't have the confidence to win. Why would I fight you?" Huh? Song Qingshu didn't react. If you hadn't saved this old man's life, this old man wouldn't have bothered talking to you. Ouyang Feng glared at him angrily. This time, he didn't die and instead regained his consciousness. Ouyang Feng was very happy at first, but the memories of the past slowly welled up in his heart, and he couldn't help but feel a little sad. Seeing Song Qingshu's handsome appearance, Ouyang Feng couldn't help but think of Ouyang Ku and wanted to give him a few pointers. Chapter 283. The biggest problem? For a moment, Song Qingshu was stumped by his question. After reflecting on the current situation, it seemed that there were problems everywhere. Maybe I'm working for the Manchurian Qing Imperial Court, so I'm in a dilemma. Song Qingshu sighed. In the past, his meridians were all broken and he lost all his martial arts. What was even more ironic was that he had a deep grudge against Zhang Wuji, who was unparalleled in martial arts and had hundreds of thousands of followers. In the past, Song Qingshu accidentally killed his martial uncle Muo Xinggu and killed 2 elders of the beggar sect at the lion-slaying gathering. He had to bear the blame for these 2 crimes. When Zhou Zhuo from the Amei sect also wanted to kill him, Song Qingshu realized that there was no place for him in the vast martial arts world. If he was willing to be a commoner and find a place to live the rest of his life, it would be fine. Unfortunately, on that day, Song Qingshu's chest was filled with endless resentment and anger. He decided to seek revenge on Zhang Wuji by hook or by crook. That was how he came up with the plan to join the Manchurian Qing Imperial Court. As Song Qingshu's strength grew, his goal in life was no longer limited to revenge. At the same time, he had more and bigger ideas. At this time, he realized that his identity in the Manchurian Qing was really a constraint. Although the Manchurian Qing did not have a deep grudge against the Song Kingdom like the Mongols and the Jin Kingdom, they did destroy the Ming Dynasty after all. Their image in the hearts of the Han people in the Central Plains was not good. If Song Qingshu wanted to be a loyal subject of the Great Qing, all of this naturally wouldn't matter. However, it just so happened that he had an even greater ambition. In the future, if others called him a traitor, he really wouldn't be able to defend himself. Although Song Qingshu had also devised a plan to clear his name, the process was too dangerous. You're in a dilemma because you think too much. Ouyang Feng gave his evaluation directly. This old man has lived for so long. From the nobles to the common people, I've come into contact with them all. Although I haven't known you for a long time, I can roughly understand your character based on the rumors I've heard about you. Although you look humble on the surface, you are extremely arrogant in your heart. Without giving Song Qingshu a chance to defend himself, Ouyang Feng continued. Whether you admit it or not, in your heart, you must think that only you can fully weigh the pros and cons of all aspects and make the best choice for both parties. The others are either not smart enough or not rational enough. In short, they will make all kinds of unfavorable choices. Therefore, you have no choice but to consider the other party's behavior while considering yourself and intentionally or unintentionally guide them to do what you want them to do. Su Quan, who was at the side, was puzzled. She raised her head and glanced at Song Qingshu. Seeing that he was silent, she was secretly alarmed. Could it be true? Ouyang Feng sneered, but that's easier said than done. If you want to achieve that perfect situation, you'll have to make corresponding sacrifices. For example, you were worried that I would throw caution to the wind and fight with you, so you spoke in a submissive tone. Song Qingshu smiled awkwardly and was about to speak when Ouyang Feng raised his hand to stop him. You are very similar to someone I used to know. Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. Who? King Zhao of the Jin Kingdom, Wanyan. Apart from controlling someone else's wife, how am I similar to him? How am I similar? Song Qingshu cursed inwardly. Of course, he was too embarrassed to say this out loud. Wanyan Honglai is also a smart man. Ouyang Feng's eyes became a little unfocused, obviously lost in his memories. Although he doesn't say it, I know that everyone is but a pawn in his eyes. His attitude of being courteous to the wise was only for the sake of greater returns. When Wanyan Honglai invited me to join the Zhao Palace, I didn't flatter him like Venerable Lingji and the others. Instead, I spoke to him bluntly. In the end, Wanyan Honglai became so humble that he became like my slave. Do you know why? Ouyang Feng glanced at Song Qingshu. Why? Although Ouyang Feng was one of the 5 greats of the Central Plains, Wanyan Honglai was a prince of the empire. There was no need for him to treat Ouyang Feng in such a manner. In the original work, Wanyan Honglai's almost kneeling attitude made Song Qingshu extremely suspicious of the power of the imperial court in Jianghu. Because he is the same as you. He thinks too much and thinks that he is the only one who can consider the pros and cons of the entire situation. In his mind, I am a Jianghu ruffian, arrogant by nature and ignorant of etiquette. If he were to use his status as a prince to pressure me, I would certainly not see the big picture and would turn hostile and leave. And there are some places where he needs an expert of my level. So even if he curses me in his heart, on the surface he will respect me even more. Just like you, as long as the big picture develops according to his wishes, he doesn't care even if he suffers a bit. Ouyang Feng chuckled. I have grasped this mentality of his. Even if I am not that difficult to please, I have to act as if I am extremely difficult to please. This is the status of 2 people. If you're strong, he is weak. If you're weak, he is strong. All of this is because he boasted that he is a smart man, and I have seen through this smart man's thoughts, so naturally I can take what I want. Thinking of his relationship with Kangxi, Song Qingshu's countenance could not help but turn somewhat unsightly. Ouyang Feng also seemed to have thought of this. With a sneer he said, I have roughly heard about your situation in the Qin court. Although Kangxi is not bad to you, it is only not bad, nothing more. What number 1 expert of the Manchurian Qing? In the end, you are still being ordered around by him like a dog. Perhaps this time it was Kangxi who ordered you to come to the Divine Dragon Island. Seeing Song Qingshu nodding with a dark face, Ouyang Feng's expression was as if he had expected it. If I were you, I would not say that Kangxi treats me like a father, but at least when he wants me to do something, he would respectfully use the word please. As for whether I am willing to help him or not, it depends on my mood at that time. Song Qingshu suddenly sweated like rain. You are saying that Kangxi is the same as you. He has seen through my thoughts? In his anxiety, Mr. Ouyang forgot to shout. As the saying goes, cleverness can be mistaken by one's own cleverness. But this is not entirely your fault. Ouyang Feng nodded. As the saying goes, one can be firm without desire. When I cooperated with Wanyan Honglai, his was greater than mine, so I naturally took the initiative. Between you and Kangxi, I am afraid you are more powerful. Even if Kangxi did not understand this at the beginning, when he noticed your respectful and cautious manner of doing things, he must have understood how great your hidden strength was. He was sure that since you had some ulterior motives, he naturally would not fall out with you because of some issues of etiquette and treatment. Therefore, he is stronger than you and you are weaker than him. Believe it or not, if you had behaved unruly, arrogant, and despotic at the beginning, your position at Kangxi's side would have been higher. Listening to a gentleman's words is better than reading books for 10 years. Song Qing-shu respectfully bowed. His mind was racing. Since everything about him was under Kangxi's control, perhaps Kangxi had already noticed his secret plan. If he acted according to the original plan, perhaps he would completely fall into Kangxi's trap. Since he had predicted that I would endure while secretly developing my strength, then I would do the exact opposite and catch him off guard. You are a promising child. Ouyang Feng nodded in satisfaction. Although he did not know what Song Qing-shu was preparing for, his decades of experience made him keenly aware that everything about Song Qing-shu was under Kangxi's control and that he was in a potential crisis. This time, I will give you some advice to repay you for helping me detoxify my poison. Ouyang Feng stood up, his bones creaking. Looking at his figure, Song Qing-shu knew that the crazy old man who walked upside down had disappeared, and that the once tyrannical Western poison had returned. This time, I have regained my consciousness, no matter how you look at it, because you played a part. Originally, this old man was not someone who would repay favors, but today, I am especially happy. If anyone needs help with anything, this old man will naturally do his best to repay today's favor. Ouyang Feng had just been saved by Hong Qigong in the past, but he had immediately plotted against Hong Qigong. Naturally, he was not someone who would repay favors. It was just that today, as if he had just woken up from a dream, felt as if it had been a lifetime. Moreover, he saw Ouyang Ke's shadow in Song Qing-shu, so he made this promise on a whim. Anything. Song Qing-shu's heart moved, and he immediately asked. Ouyang Feng had a faint smile on his face. Kid, Western Poison, have never been someone who keeps promises. That will depend on what you want me to do. When the time comes, I will do it if I am happy. But if I am not, then this promise will naturally be invalid. Ouyang Feng was a formidable character, so naturally, he would not be bound by a paper promise. This is the style of Western Poison in the past. Song Qing-shu laughed awkwardly. He was very clear that if he ran to Ouyang Feng and asked him to join forces with him to kill their way to Light Peak, Ouyang Feng would probably slap him. It seemed that in the future, he would only be able to ask for Ouyang Feng's help if they had the same interests. The group arrived at the entrance of the cave. Looking at the heavy stone door, Ouyang Feng frowned. You want to combine our strength to open this stone door? He had just forced out the poison, so his body's true energy was greatly damaged. He was at his weakest. Thus, when Ouyang Feng had given Song Qing-shu pointers out of goodwill, it was not necessarily because he wanted to use this opportunity to recover his strength. This was to prevent Song Qing-shu from suddenly attacking him. This stone door weighs tens of thousands of kilograms. It is impossible to open it with brute force, so we can only use tricks. Song Qing-shu deliberately paused. When he saw the two of them looking at him nervously, he found it a little funny. He continued, there are two ways now. One is to dig a tunnel from the side of the wall. This place is not far from the cave entrance, so we should be able to see the light of day in a few meters. This was the inspiration of the elders of Sun Moon's sect who had been trapped in the Repent Cliff. One of them had used a giant axe to cut open the mountain and forcefully dug to the entrance of the cave before dying of exhaustion. Now that they were near the entrance of the cave, this problem naturally did not exist. The Spirit Serpent Cave did not rely on the stone door to imprison its enemies. The walls of the cave entrance were also made of ordinary mountain soil, not solid rammed earth or stone. Otherwise, it would be impossible to make a cave out of it. Chapter 284. The second way, Song Qing-shu paused and turned his eyes to the joint of the stone door in the wall. The people who plotted against us this time are definitely not from the Divine Dragon sect. Why? Su Quan subconsciously thought that Hong Antong was plotting against Song Qing-shu and Ouyang Feng. After all, the Spirit Snake Cave and the Five-Color Dragon were too unique to the Divine Dragon Island. But she had clearly hinted to him that Song Qing-shu's soul had been captured by her. Could it be that he saw through the flaw and became angry out of humiliation? Su Quan was still hesitant, but hearing Song Qing-shu's words, she quickly raised her head and asked. If it was someone from the Divine Dragon Island, they would definitely not spend so much effort to use this stone door to trap us, because this stone door has a fatal weakness. Ouyang Feng was a quick-witted person. Following Song Qing-shu's gaze, he quickly came to a realization. You mean the door axle? Looking at the joint of the stone door in the wall, Ouyang Feng finally saw the essential difference between this stone door and the broken dragon stone in the tomb of the living dead. Once the broken dragon stone was put down, it could no longer be opened, so it was purely blocked with a stone door that weighed over 10,000 jin. Although the stone door in front of them also weighed over 10,000 jin, for the convenience of opening and closing, it was not a structure that fell from above like the broken dragon stone. Instead, it was a structure that could be opened and closed freely like an ordinary door. An ordinary door needed a door axle, and this stone door was no exception. Its door axle was embedded in the wall next to it, and the wall was not a solid mountain stone. The stone door was locked from the outside, and these door axles became the breakthrough point. Mr. Ouyang, if you and I work together and use 10% of our power to attack this stone door at the same time, although the stone door can remain undamaged, the door axle can't stand repeated damage. Song Qing-shu thought that with the power of one person attacking the stone door, he might not be able to break the door axle. This is the reason why you came back to save me? Ouyang Feng's expression suddenly became very strange. Mr. Ouyang won't think that my motive for saving you is impure, right? Song Qing-shu laughed a few times awkwardly. I'm just laughing at your stupidity. Why go through so much trouble? Ouyang Feng sneered a few times. Without waiting for Song Qing-shu's cooperation, he walked straight to the corner of the wall. Without looking at the huge hinges, he pressed his palm on the wall near the hinges. Why don't you try again? Song Qing-shu doubtfully struck the stone door with his palm, only to hear a caw-caw sound in his ears. The entire stone door had already begun to loosen. Song Qing-shu was overjoyed. He circulated the three-layered dragon, subduing waves, and combined the three palms of the overbearing dragon show's remorse into one palm. With a bang, the huge stone door slowly fell outwards. When she saw the sunlight that she was used to, Su Quan, who had survived the disaster, felt extremely lucky. Very soon, Ouyang Feng's voice rang out again. Can't you just use your inner force to shatter the wall near the axle? Why do you only want to use brute force? Song Qing-shu couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Just now, he couldn't think straight. In his mind, he was thinking about how much palm force to hit the stone door to loosen the hinges. His first reaction was to save Ouyang Feng and combine their strength. After that, he didn't think about how to save Ouyang Feng, but how to persuade the other party to cooperate sincerely. A moment of carelessness caused him to be despised by a perennial epileptic. Sect leader will enjoy immortal happiness and longevity as long as heavens. Reporting to sect leader, the people we sent out have returned. We can't find Madame and Song Qing-shu anywhere. A Divine Dragon Island disciple knelt in front of Hong Antong and said, What about Western Poison Ouyang Feng? Hearing that both of them were missing, Hong Antong snorted coldly. His ruddy face flashed with a trace of green. There's no news either. Feeling that Hong Antong's tone was not good, the Divine Dragon Island disciple hurriedly replied, The people you sent to serve Ouyang Feng were all killed last night. It said that later, some disciples saw Ouyang Feng and Song Qing-shu fighting fiercely in the forest. The other disciples didn't dare to approach them. Later, both of them disappeared. Could it be that both of them were injured and drowned in the sea? A trace of doubt arose in Hong Antong's heart, but it was soon replaced by irritation. He waved his hand to signal the disciple to leave. It was no wonder that Hong Antong was depressed. He had prepared Ouyang Feng, a big killer, so he had the confidence to control the overall situation. Later, Su Quan brought Song Qing-shu, an expert who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Western poison. According to her hint, Song Qing-shu had already been used by her. Hong Antong thought that with these two experts on his side, it wouldn't be difficult for them to get through this great calamity. However, he didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, Hong Antong would become a loner again. Thinking of the envoys sent by various forces, each with an unfathomable intention, Hong Antong had an ominous premonition. Sect leader, the guests are already waiting in the hall. Hearing the voice of the disciple outside the room, Hong Antong woke up with a start. His eyes regained the fierceness of the past, and he calmly walked to the hall. Sect leader Hong, before this humble Taoist left, Prince Bao specifically told me that as long as you hand over Su Quan, the main culprit, we will immediately withdraw from Divine Dragon Island. Today is the deadline. Sect leader, tell me if you want to hand over or not. In the hall, True Jade Master's sorry figure from last night, when he was chased by Ouyang Feng, was swept away. He looked at Hong Antong with an aggressive gaze. What if I don't hand it over? Hong Antong sinisterly said. It wasn't that he didn't have the thought of sacrificing Su Quan before, but for many years, he had been extremely fond of this beautiful wife, so it was difficult for him to make up his mind in such a short time. Not to mention that Su Quan also brought back a super thug. Then it's inevitable that the people of your island will be plunged into an abyss of suffering. True Jade Master chuckled, and his threatening tone was overflowing. Sacrificing one person will save the people of the entire island. As the sect leader, your distinguished self shouldn't be unable to distinguish the severity of this matter. Or is it that some people are reluctant to part with their wife, and selfishly? Hong Antong was an awe-inspiring figure in his sect, so when had anyone dared to speak to him in such a strange tone? Hearing what was said, Hong Antong immediately became furious. Just as he was about to flare up, Sangja, who was on the side, came out to smooth things over. Sect leader Hong, today is the deadline given by Shangjing. This matter is related to the survival of Divine Dragon Cult, whether it's war or peace. Has your Divine Dragon Island reached an agreement yet? On behalf of Prince Ali Buj, I will always support your sect's decision. Finished speaking, he quietly gave Su Shiwedding a meaningful glance. Hong Antong's heart warmed. Although recently Sangja's actions were somewhat suspicious, they were, after all, allies in the same camp. With Ali Buj's support, Shengjing would always have some misgivings. Yalu Nanxian, who had been silent all this time, sneered incessantly in her heart. Last night, she had already discovered Sangja's plot. Perhaps this time, Hong Antong was finished. Our emperor and the southern courtyard's king quite appreciate sect leader Hong. King Shao is currently fighting with Manchurian Qing's Wu Sangue outside of Shanhai Pass. If sect leader starts a war with Shengjing, our country hopes to form an alliance with your sect to jointly resist the Manchurian Qing. Clearly seeing the powerful relationship between the various countries, Yalu Nanxian naturally didn't want Divine Dragon Island to be destroyed so easily. If Hong Li and Kangxi went to war, Mongolia would have one less counterbalance. Not to mention, she received a secret order from official Su to protect Su Quan. If she allowed Hong Antong to hand over Su Quan, she was afraid she wouldn't be able to control his life and death. At that time, she could only take a risk and see if she could save Su Quan and escape. Fortunately, with Song Qingshu's help, protecting Su Quan would be a lot easier. Thinking of this, Yalu Nanxian couldn't help but search for Song Qingshu's figure in the hall again. After she still couldn't find him, her beautiful eyebrows couldn't help but show a trace of worry. On the other side, Blood Knife Ancestor and Sangjia looked at each other. They were quite angry, but they couldn't do anything. After all, Liao was Mongolia's ally, and the Mongolia they represented supported Hong Antong on the surface. Hearing Yalu Nanxian's words, they couldn't help but regret that they didn't inform Liao's people beforehand. Su Shiwedding got Sangjia's hint, hesitated for a moment, but still stood up and said, "Leader, subordinate has something to say, but I don't know if I should say it." "Speak." Hong Antong's face was gloomy, and he snorted. In the past, Leader single-handedly founded the Divine Dragon cult, and there were a total of 1,023 old brothers who followed Leader. For many years, they went through water and tread on fire, but today some lost their lives in the hands of the enemy. Some were executed because they made some small mistakes. Counting, there are less than 100 people left. Although Leader and Madam have recruited a large number of young followers, unfortunately, the Divine Dragon cult is no longer as grand as it was in the past. Su Shiweding slowly said each word. His tone was deep, and sometimes there was even a hint of sobbing. When some of the old people in the hall heard this, they couldn't help but sigh as they recalled the past. Hong Antong's face became more and more unsightly. Seeing Su Shiweding getting more and more excited, he couldn't help but snort heavily. Blue Dragon Envoy, we are now discussing the invasion of foreign enemies. Why are you bringing up this irrelevant topic? I'm talking about the invasion of foreign enemies. Su Shiweding's expression suddenly became a little agitated. Leader, do you know when it started that old people like us were killed for no reason? Seeing that Hong Antong was silent, Su Shiweding said hatefully, it started when Leader married that woman. Shut up. Hong Antong's hair and beard were standing on end. Su Shiweding could not help but feel a little scared when he glared at him. For a moment, he couldn't say the words that he had thought of. What Brother Su said makes sense. Upon seeing this, Taoist priest Wugen, who was at the side, quickly stepped forward and said, ever since that woman came to the island, Leader, you've changed. You can't remember us old brothers anymore. Madam likes to use young people, and she feels that us old people are an eyesore, so she made all kinds of strict sect rules. If we slightly violated it, she would take the opportunity to kill us. Leader, you've been watching silently. Us old brothers are really disappointed. I've always been a meritorious person, and I don't care about age. As long as you have the ability and are loyal to me, I'll never treat you unfairly. Since the old people are loyal to me, I'll naturally still treat them as good brothers and will never discriminate against them. Red Dragon Envoy, you're thinking too much. If it weren't for the fact that they were facing a foreign enemy with Hong Antong's temperament, these two people would have been killed long ago if they dared to contradict him like that. Even with Hong Antong's tyranny, he had no choice but to explain patiently. In that case, the reason why so many of our brothers were killed before was because they were not loyal to Leader. Black Dragon Envoy Zhang Danues smiled sadly. As soon as he said this, many of the old people in the hall revealed indignant expressions. The young disciples looked at each other and nervously held the hilt of their sabers. I didn't say that. Hong Antong was expressionless. All right, the dead are gone, but there are thousands of disciples on the island now. We can't continue to send them to their deaths just because of Leader's words, right? Su Shiweding, who had already recovered, said, what do you want? Hong Antong said coldly. When Song Qing Shu and the other two left the Spirit Serpent Cave and arrived near the meeting hall, the various forces had already begun to plot against each other. The three of them did not plan to show their faces. They unanimously chose to hide outside the hall and silently observed the situation inside. Song Qing Shu turned to look at the Leader's wife, who was as beautiful as a flower, and teased in a low voice, looks like your husband still cares about you. Chapter 285. He was already tempted, but he was worried that if he handed me over, the army outside would not let Shenlong Island off. If that happened, he would suffer a double loss and lose face. Naturally, he would not agree easily. Su Quan had followed Hong Antong for a long time. Coupled with her trusted aide's information, she naturally knew what Hong Antong was thinking. Before Song Qing Shu could reply, Ouyang Feng's face was full of mockery. Little brother, this woman is flirtatious to the bone. Her gestures are full of charm. I am really worried that you will be infatuated with her in the future. Not at all. Su Quan was stunned and her face flushed. She angrily stamped her feet. Mr. Ouyang, you are a person of virtue and prestige. Why are you making fun of a little girl like me? Of virtue and prestige. Ouyang Feng snorted. Fortunately, I do not like women. Otherwise, if I saw such a flirtatious girl like you, I would have followed Kerr and taken you into my room first. Thinking of Ouyang Ku, Ouyang Feng sighed. My poor Kerr. Song Qing-shu thought that Ouyang could use to rape good girls in his early years. He was a disgrace to his generation. In the end, he only had himself to blame for his death. Of course, he still had to put on a show. He was about to say a few words when Ouyang Feng suddenly became angry. In the end, Ku-er was harmed by Guojing and Huangrong. If it were not for Huangrong, Ku-er's legs would not have been broken and he would not have been taken advantage of. I want to deal with Guojing and Huangrong. Will you help me? Ah, Song Qing-shu was surprised. He did not expect his thoughts to jump so far. He thought about how the couple was a glorious image in the eyes of the common people. Moreover, they were highly skilled in martial arts. They also had the help of masters like Hong Qigong and Huang Yaoshi. He would be stupid to get involved in this mess. Seeing Song Qing-shu's embarrassed expression, Ouyang Feng quickly regained his senses. He understood that even if he agreed to work for Song Qing-shu, this little fox would not provoke the couple. Suddenly, an idea flashed through Ouyang Feng's mind. This kid's face was like a peach blossom. It seemed like he was a lecherous person. Huang Rong was already very beautiful when she was a little girl, and now that she was married, she was even more charming. If he used her, in the blink of an eye, Ouyang Feng had come up with a plan to use Huang Rong to force Song Qing-shu to deal with Guojing. A strange smile appeared on his face. Let's not talk about this for now, but I believe that you will agree in the future. Song Qing-shu was baffled. How could he possibly agree to it? At this moment, there was a quarrel in the hall. He quickly turned around to look. What do you want? Hong Antong stared at Su Xueting and spoke in a ghastly tone. Hong Antong had accumulated his power for a long time. Su Xueting felt his legs turn to jelly when he was glared at by Hong Antong. However, he remembered that he had many helpers this time, so he immediately regained his confidence. Since Prince Bao has the intention, we will retreat as long as you hand over the lady. Compared to the foundation of the Divine Dragon cult and the safety of thousands of cult members, a mere woman is nothing. In actual fact, Su Xueting understood very well that since he was forced to this extent by the crowd, even if Hong Antong had the idea of sacrificing Su Quan previously, he would definitely not agree to it now. After all, if Hong Antong took the initiative to offer to hand over Su Quan, the cult members would only be grateful to him, and their prestige would only rise instead of fall. However, if the cult members were to force him to hand over Su Quan, the significance would be completely different. Even if they managed to deal with the great army outside, Hong Antong's prestige would collapse, and the cult members who were already deeply oppressed would become restless. You're courting death. How could Hong Antong, as the cult leader, not understand what Su Xueting was able to understand? He looked at the hopeful gleam in the eyes of the crowd below him, and knew that if he did not kill the chicken as an example to the monkeys and deter them from their budding desire, he was afraid that they would be in danger today. Hong Antong twisted a piece of wood from the handle of his chair and channeled his inner energy to shoot it at Su Xueting. Although Su Xueting's martial arts skill could be considered first class in the Divine Dragon cult, how could he withstand Hong Antong's raging attack? Just as his chest was about to be pierced, a horsetail whisk suddenly swept over and changed the direction of the wooden stick, thus saving Su Xueting's life. Su Xueting was still in a state of shock, and he gratefully looked at True Jade. True Jade, this is my cult's matter. What do you mean by this? Hong Antong was both startled and angry. True Jade also had the same idea of causing internal strife in the Divine Dragon cult, so he naturally could not sit idly by and watch Hong Antong unify the entire cult with a thunderous momentum. Upon hearing what was said, he smiled and said, "Your honorable cult's talents are now withering. So why would cult leader Hong take the lives of the experts under your command just because of a disagreement?" True Jade's words were like cold water poured into boiling oil, igniting the long-suppressed resentment of the Divine Dragon cult members. Su Xueting angrily cursed. This old fool only cares about that vixen. When did he ever care about us? Brothers, Hong Antong is unwilling to sacrifice that vixen, but it seems he is prepared to sacrifice us. It will be better for us to risk our lives and kill Hong Antong first, then capture Su Quan and hand her over to Daoist priest True Jade. With that, the Divine Dragon Island siege will definitely be resolved. Outside the window, Song Qing-shu turned his body sideways to look at Su Quan's round and smooth earlobes. He moved closer and gently blew on them. Vixen, Su Quan turned around, a layer of slight anger hanging on her face. You're the Vixen. If there's also a male Vixen, I wouldn't mind. Song Qing-shu bashfully looked at her with a beaming smile. I really can't stand the two of you talking about love. Ouyang Feng coughed lightly, a strange expression on his face. There's nothing else worth paying attention to here. I'll be leaving first. Su Quan's face became hot from his words. She turned her head away and no longer said anything. Song Qing-shu curiously asked, You're not going to take revenge for being plotted against. It's just some sneaky tricks of a jumping clown, that's all. I don't feel like paying attention to him. Ouyang Feng looked towards the western sky. What's more, this is a blessing in disguise. I've recovered my sanity. I've been away from home for a long time. I have to go back and take a look. White Camel Manor. Song Qing-shu curiously asked. Ouyang Feng nodded. I'm also going to the Jin Kingdom to visit some of my old friends. Little brother, we'll meet again in the future if fate allows it. Then, without waiting for his reply, Ouyang Feng leaped up and disappeared into the distance. I wonder if the next time we meet will be an enemy or a friend. Song Qing-shu sighed, seeing that Su Quan was staring at the fight inside. He couldn't help but reach out his hand to hold her waist. What's wrong? Are you worried about your husband's safety? Feeling the heat of the big hand on her waist, Su Quan's body trembled. She knew that this was inappropriate, but she had a feeling that she didn't want to resist. Her pair of beautiful eyes couldn't help but look at Song Qing-shu. Although I'm more handsome than your husband, you don't have to keep staring at me. Song Qing-shu curiously asked. Su Quan shook her head. I just feel that you're a little different from before. What's different? Song Qing-shu was stunned. For example, you very naturally hugged me. You didn't do this in the past. Oh, anyway, I can't tell. Su Quan's pretty face was already extremely charming. At this time, there was a trace of blush, which made her look even more charming. Hearing her words, Song Qing-shu thoughtfully said, Fortunately, Ouyang Feng showed me the right path. Only then did I know how uncomfortable my life was in the past. Now that you're free, you come and take advantage of me? Su Quan pursed her lips and said resentfully. She didn't look like a mature woman at all. She was clearly a little girl who had been wronged. Taoist Wugen and Zhang Danyue had already discussed with Su Shiwedding. In addition, with the secret help of Blood Knife Ancestor and Songjia, they naturally had confidence in their hearts. Hearing this, they both took a step forward and echoed Su Shiwedding. Their respective disciples also took the opportunity to wave the flag and shout war cry. Hong Antong's expression changed slightly. He didn't expect that the few 5 dragon envoys would all rebel. A trace of anger appeared on his face. In his heart, he thought, Fine, you all rebel against me. At worst, I'll kill you all and promote a few more people to be the 5 dragon envoys. He knew that as long as he executed these few leaders on the spot, the people of the cult would naturally calm down. Surrounded by strong enemies, Hong Antong decided to end the battle quickly. Among the 3 of them, Zhang Danyue's martial art was the weakest. Hong Antong made a feint in the east and attacked in the west. He looked like he was pouncing towards Su Shiwedding. When Su Shiwedding concentrated on defending and the other 2 came to his rescue, his body leaned to one side and his right palm struck toward the top of Zhang Danyue's head. Zhang Danyue was greatly shocked. Wielding the Mandarin duck twin daggers, he stabbed upward 7 times in a split second. It was indeed his life's effort. The 7 stabs were extremely swift and fierce. Cult leader Hong slightly tilted his right palm and lightly pressed on the left side of Zhang Danyue's chest, borrowing the momentum to leap away. Zhang Danyue let out a loud cry and rolled on the ground. He flipped over and stood up. His face was dark green. Very soon, his legs went soft and he fell to the ground. It seemed like he was going to die. Su Shiwedding and Taoist Wugen were scared out of their wits. They subconsciously glanced at Blood Knife Ancestor and Songjia. Who would have thought that the other party had no intention of making a move? They cursed inwardly. They had no choice but to brace themselves and face Hong Antong's fierce attack. As the saying goes, good advice is unpleasant to the ear. The 3 Fire Dragon envoys are doing this for the sake of the several thousand followers of Divine Dragon Cult. It's fine if cult leader Hong doesn't accept it, but there is no need to secretly kill them. This humble Taoist can't stand it, so I want to interfere. He naturally hoped that Divine Dragon Cult would fight internally and both sides would suffer. However, looking at the current situation, perhaps it would be very difficult for Su Shiweting and the others to injure Hong Antong. Therefore, True Jade decided to balance the disparity in strength between the two sides. Hong Antong was about to dispose of Su Shiweting and Taoist Wugen. Who would have thought that True Jade would suddenly join the fray? He couldn't help but be alarmed and angry at the same time. True Jade's martial arts were not inferior to Hong Antong's. With the addition of the lightning changes, his movement technique was extremely ghostly. Intentionally or unintentionally, he guided Su Shiweting and Taoist Wugen to endure the majority of Hong Antong's attacks. Meanwhile, he himself would suddenly launch a ruthless attack from time to time. With True Jade's help, Su Shiweting and Taoist Wugen's spirits were greatly boosted. They desperately entangled Hong Antong's hands and feet so that True Jade would have the opportunity to deal a fatal blow. Seeing that Hong Antong was surrounded by perils, Blood Knife Ancestor and Songjia glanced at each other and tacitly joined the fray. They shouted, "Cult leader Hong, we will lend you a helping hand." How experienced was Hong Antong? The reason why he was surrounded by perils was because he had diverted a part of his energy to guard against these people's sudden sneak attacks. However, when he saw that the two of them had actually helped him block Su Shiweting and Taoist Wugen's attacks, he felt relieved. When Su Shiweting and Taoist Wugen saw that the other side didn't act according to their previous agreement, they couldn't help but be alarmed and angry. Just as they were about to open their mouths to question them, Blood Knife Ancestor and Songjia didn't give them a chance. Although Su Shiweting and Taoist Wugen could be considered experts, how could they compare to these two underworld giants? Very soon, they were forced into a perilous situation. Chapter 286. You guys went back on your word. Su Shiweting finally understood that he was being used, but it was too late for regrets. He knew that if he continued to fight, he would die sooner or later, so he could only take the risk to expose their plot to the public, hoping to unite with Hong Antong again. However, this distraction naturally exposed a flaw in his moves. Blood Knife Ancestor's combat experience was abundant, so he took advantage of this opportunity to slit Su Shiweting's throat. Hearing Su Shiweting scream, Taoist Wugen panicked and turned to flee, but Songjia pressed his back with a large palm, causing him to stagger a few steps before finally vomiting blood and dying. True Jade's expression changed, and he quickly jumped out of the battle circle, using the lightning of interchangeability to run away. Suddenly, a sword light flashed in front of him, and he retreated several zhang in shock, forcing True Jade back with one sword strike. Yellow Nancian didn't feel any joy, but instead felt puzzled. Could it be that last night's plot was to numb Su Shiweting's group? Could it be that all my previous deductions were wrong? Blood Knife Ancestor and Songjia took this opportunity to spread out, forming a three-pronged formation with Hong Antong, firmly surrounding True Jade in the center. Yellow Chi was itching to go, but Yellow Nancian couldn't figure out what these people were up to, so she signaled him to stay put. I'm afraid True Jade won't be able to escape this time. Su Quan shook her head. She clearly understood that Hong Antong's martial arts were slightly better than True Jade's, and True Jade was only able to fight evenly with Hong Antong by relying on the lightning of interchangeability. Now that the other two experts of the same level had joined in, True Jade's fate was grim. That's not necessarily true. Maybe Hong Antong is in danger. Song Qingshu pondered for a moment, then saw through these people's scheme. Su Quan's 7 apertures heart was exquisite, so she quickly reacted, and her pretty face couldn't help but change slightly. "Do you want me to save your husband?" An indescribable smile hung on Song Qingshu's lips. Su Quan shook her head. "This old thief snatched me to be the sect master's wife. Although it was only to maintain his prestige in front of his subordinates and cover up his incapacity, and he didn't do anything to me, I still hate him. Even if he doesn't die this time, sooner or later, I will destroy the foundation of Divine Dragon Island, and then kill him. Why do you have to intentionally or unintentionally emphasize your innocence to me?" Song Qingshu laughed even more proudly. Su Quan's face was a little embarrassed. Her charming face, which was full of spring glow, was drained of blood. "You naturally know what I am thinking in my heart. Why do you have to ridicule me?" Song Qingshu did not expect her to be so frank. A mature woman was indeed different from a young girl. She was very clear about what kind of man she wanted, and she knew when to advance or retreat. She would give you a clear hint, but she would not make it completely clear to avoid the risk of being rejected. "What I mean is, even if you don't say it, I know everything." Song Qingshu held Su Quan's slightly trembling hand. The warmth of his palm restored color to her face. As the saying goes, when two countries are at war, envoys are not beheaded. "What are you all doing?" True Jade's complexion was somewhat unsightly. "Humph, just now. When you cooperated with my men to rebel against your superiors, why didn't you remember your identity as an envoy?" Hong Antong coldly snorted, but in his heart, he was thinking that if he killed True Jade, then he would completely shed all pretense of cordiality with Shengjing's sect, and the following decisive battle would be unavoidable. But in order to make them retreat, if he offered a hand over Su Quan at this time, how would the disciples see him? While Hong Antong was hesitating, Bloodknife Ancestor and Songjia had already called out to True Jade. Although the two of them joined hands to win against True Jade's Qinggong was too ingenious, and several times they almost broke out of the encirclement. Very well, now that the people in the sect are wavering, killing True Jade to re-establish our prestige is also good. Hong Antong was, after all, an ambitious and ruthless character of his generation. Soon he made up his mind. It just so happened that under the joint attack of Bloodknife Ancestor and Songjia, True Jade revealed a fatal flaw in his back. Hong Antong leaped up and silently struck his palm toward True Jade's back. For some reason, there was a gap between the joint attack of Bloodknife Ancestor and Songjia, and True Jade took this opportunity to jump out of their encirclement. However, Hong Antong was clear that True Jade's figure was old, so he was confident that this palm strike could seriously injure the opposite party, even if he didn't die. If he missed this once in a blue moon opportunity with True Jade's Qinggong, no one in the hall would be able to catch up to him. Therefore, he didn't withdraw his palm force, but instead took this opportunity to cover up. Who would have thought that there was no panic on True Jade's face? Instead, a trace of a treacherous smile floated on his face. Hong Antong knew that the situation was far from good and promptly leaned to the side. Unfortunately, it was still too late. Songjia's big handprint and Bloodknife Ancestor's blood knife had already struck his fatal spot. "What?" Hong Antong knelt on the ground, angrily glaring at the two people who had launched a sneak attack on him. He was well aware of his own injuries. His heart meridian had been broken by the big handprint, and at the same time, there was a badly mangled wound on his waist. His spine had been severed by the blood knife. Even if a great principal golden immortal came, he wouldn't be able to save him. Seeing the sudden reversal of the situation, the Yellow siblings were inwardly apprehensive. "Hong Antong, as the cult leader, you have gone against the grain and harmed loyal people. You should have abdicated long ago. These two martial arts masters are just enforcing justice on behalf of heaven." A voice came from the corner. Hong Antong turned his head to look, and his anger turned into a smile. "I was wondering who it was, so it's Yellow Dragon Envoy Jean. Su Xueding and the others rebelled against me, but at least they dared to challenge me. They can be considered heroes. A shameless villain like you, seeing that the outcome has been decided, you came out to fart. Simply shameless to the extreme." Hong Antong's aura was still lingering, and Jean trembled in fear. He subconsciously shrank back. At this time, Bloodknife Ancestor laughed sinisterly. Yellow Dragon Envoy, now that you have the highest position in the Divine Dragon Cult, you can go and kill Hong Antong. Naturally, you will be the next cult leader, and we will support you with all our strength. What do you think? Although Jin was afraid, when he thought of becoming the cult leader, his greed slowly took over. He picked up his knife and walked step by step towards Hong Antong. Although the other Divine Dragon cult disciples in the hall were ashamed of Jin, the current situation was stronger than him, so they dared not say anything. Hong Antong felt his life slowly slipping away. Seeing Jin deliberately approaching him slowly, he knew that he would not be able to fight back after a long time. He smiled sadly. Fine, Hong Antong, have been a hero all my life. I can't die in the hands of a thief like you. After saying that, he circulated his remaining internal energy and sealed the top of his head. Whoosh! A small stone flew in from outside, and Hong Antong's wrist went numb, and his hand drooped down powerlessly. Everyone looked towards the door in shock. Seeing Song Qing-shu and Su Quan slowly walking in, everyone in the hall had different expressions. Song Dage. Fong, he was among the Divine Dragon cult disciples. Originally, she was worried that Song Qing-shu had met with misfortune. Now that she saw Song Qing-shu, she was so excited that she stood up. Song Qing-shu signaled her to stay there for the time being. He came in front of Hong Antong and sighed. Cult leader Hong, the battle between you and me in Yangzhou is still vivid in my mind. I didn't expect that when we meet again, it would be under such circumstances. The affairs of the world are really unpredictable. Madam, is that you? Hong Antong snorted coldly. He did not pay attention to him. Instead, he looked at Su Quan with pleasant surprise. Looking at Hong Antong's weak breath, Su Quan's expression was somewhat complicated. Her lips were tightly closed. Madam, for so many years, from your various actions, I know that you have always wanted to kill me. Now that I am finally going to die, are you happy? Speaking of all this, Hong Antong's expression was calm. If I did not kill you with my own hands, why would I be happy? Su Quan said with a cold laugh. It's only right for you to hate me. After all, I deserve it. Hong Antong said with a bitter smile. However, you and I have been husband and wife for so many years. Ask yourself honestly, have I treated you well or not? Su Quan hesitated for a while and nodded. You are indeed very good to me. That's good. Looking at our many years of friendship, before I die, I want to ask you one thing. Hong Antong smiled in relief. Su Quan glanced at Song Qingshu's expression. Seeing that he did not have any expression, she nodded and said, Speak. Help me kill Jin, that shameless villain. Hong Antong said while gnashing his teeth. Okay. Su Quan did not hesitate. Her figure flashed, and she arrived next to Jin. Jin's martial arts skill was originally the lowest among the 5 dragon envoys. He only knew how to flatter others. Su Quan attacked without hesitation. Before he could react, Jin's neck was broken. Seeing that Jin was killed, Hong Antong nodded with satisfaction. He used the last of his internal energy and said loudly, Su Quan has done a meritorious service in protecting the cult. I have decided to pass the position of cult leader to her. Do you have any objections? Many of the Divine Dragon followers in the hall were Su Quan's trusted followers. In terms of prestige and martial arts skill, no one in the Divine Dragon cult could compare to Su Quan. The disciples hesitated for a moment, then knelt down and accepted the order. Bloodknife Ancestor and the others' faces were ashen. Su Quan was also somewhat at a loss. On the contrary, Song Qingshu looked at Hong Antong with admiration and gave him a thumbs up. You can pick up and let go. Song Mao admires you. Hong Antong looked at Song Qingshu, and the expression on his face became very strange. Loathing, anger, regret, and all kinds of emotions came one after another. In the end, thousands of words turned into one sentence. Treat her well in the future. Just as his voice fell, he passed away. What did he say to you? Su Quan walked back and looked at Song Qingshu. Their conversation was very soft, so it was difficult for the others in the hall to hear them clearly. Song Qingshu shook his head. Instead, he turned to Blood Knife Ancestor and the others. Last night's plot against us, we should also settle it. Darren Song, it couldn't be better that you came. The Mongolian and Khitan envoy's martial art skills are very high. This humble Taoist was worried that we would be outnumbered. You and I are ministers of the same court, so we should help each other, True Jade said happily. As he spoke, he approached Song Qingshu. Song Qingshu had a faint smile on his face. Is that so? Who was it that lured Ouyang Feng to fight with me yesterday? I don't want to repeat Hong Antong's mistake. Seeing that Song Qingshu had seen through their secret alliance, True Jade said fiercely, Song Qingshu, although your martial arts skill is high, there are so many top-notch experts here. I don't believe you can get away with it. True Jade had been defeated by Song Qingshu several times, so a shadow had already formed in his heart. His self-esteem as an expert urged him to do his best to break this hard devil. Otherwise, in the future, his martial art would not advance and would instead regress. It was rare for so many experts to be gathered here, so True Jade was clear that this was a rare opportunity to break this hard devil. Blood Knife Ancestor and Song Jia had both suffered at the hands of Song Qingshu, so they had long wanted to kill him. Moreover, Song Qingshu was the #1 expert of the Manchurian Qing. Whoever could kill him would not only be heavily rewarded by Prince Ali Buj, but they would also receive the highest prestige in the martial arts world. Although they had misgivings about Song Qingshu's martial arts skills, the three of them thought that if they joined hands with the Yelu siblings, who had amazing martial arts, it wouldn't be impossible for them to kill Song Qingshu on the spot. As a result, they all held their breaths and focused their attention, quietly surrounding Song Qingshu. Chapter 287. Ever since his conversation with Ouyang Feng, the shadow that had accumulated in Song Qingshu's heart had suddenly cleared up, and the entire world in his eyes had become very different from before. Blood Knife Ancestor, Venerable Songjia, and True Jade were all grandmasters who ruled over a region. They were the best of the best in the world of martial artists. Song Qingshu stood calmly with his hands clasped behind his back despite being surrounded by the three of them. There was not a hint of seriousness on his face. Su Quan and the others, seeing his arrogance, couldn't help but break out in cold sweat for him. In the eyes of the three of them, however, it was a completely different scene. They clearly saw Song Qingshu standing there, yet they were unable to sense his existence. That feeling that was similar to the warping of space caused them to be anxious and bewildered, and their courage was taken away. True Jade clearly knew that he had pretended to curry favor with Song Qingshu, but he had secretly joined forces with Blood Knife Ancestor and the others to lure Ouyang Feng over, taking advantage of the opportunity to eliminate the two. Now that Song Qingshu had escaped, the one who was the most angry was probably himself. Seeing that Blood Knife Ancestor and Song Jia had the intention to retreat, he knew that even if Song Qingshu let them go, he might not let him go. He had no choice but to bite the bullet and take the initiative to initiate the battle, tying Blood Knife Ancestor and Song Jia to the same boat. With a lesson from Shengjing sect, True Jade didn't dare to use Taishan sect's sword technique this time. Instead, he switched to Iron Sword sect's martial arts. His sword moved nimbly, and coupled with the marvelous lightning steps of 100 changes, his figure drifted erratically towards Song Qingshu. The other people in the field secretly admired him. True Jade seemed to have turned into 7 afterimages, each of which was like smoke or fog, making it hard for people to see them clearly. Even before the fight began, he was already in an invincible position. Blood Knife Ancestor and Master Songjia were extremely experienced people, so they knew that if they just stood by and watched, they would eventually be defeated one by one. Thus, it was better to combine their strength, and the outcome was still unknown. The two of them shouted loudly and took advantage of this opportunity to close in. Blood Knife Ancestor brandished his blood knife, which flickered with a cold light. Songjia's giant palm seal was incomparably profound. Together with True Jade, They attacked Song Qing-shu from 3 different directions. "Be careful," the 2 women warned in unison. Su Quan turned around and looked at Fong Yi with a smile that was not a smile. Fong Yi felt a chill in her heart when she was stared at by Su Quan. She quickly lowered her head, but the corner of her eyes still drifted to the field. True Jade was very satisfied with his performance this time. Whether it was the timing or the angle of the thrust, it was the culmination of a lifetime of experience. He was confident that any expert would retreat under such a treacherous sword move. Very quickly, the smile on his face froze. Song Qing-shu had only moved his body slightly to the side, and he had dodged his most powerful strike. Shocked, True Jade wanted to retreat, but at this moment, Song Qing-shu stretched out 2 fingers. His speed was very slow, so slow that True Jade could clearly see the trajectory of his opponent's hand. However, he was stunned to find that he couldn't dodge. In the next moment, the sword in his hand was firmly caught by those 2 fingers. In a moment of absent-mindedness, True Jade felt a skillful force coming from the tip of the sword. He was pulled by the other party to meet Blood Knife Ancestor's attack. Blood Knife Ancestor aimed a lightning-fast strike at Song Qing-shu's back. Just as he was secretly delighted, his vision blurred, and in the next moment, True Jade's sword unexpectedly stabbed at him. The sword was a treasure sword that could cut through iron like mud, and the knife was also a treasure sword with a threatening cold air. After the sword and blade collided, Blood Knife Ancestor and True Jade retreated several meters, feeling their blood and chi in turmoil. They looked at the gaps in their weapons and didn't have the time to feel distressed. They hastily raised their heads to watch the battle. After Song Qing-shu had forced the 2 masters to retreat, a wooden sword appeared in his right hand out of nowhere. Looking at the complicated and abstruse handprints that were coming at him from the side, he raised the sword and stabbed at a certain point in the handprints. Master Sanjia screamed and flew back. When he steadied himself, his chubby face was drenched in cold sweat. His hands were hidden in the wide sleeves of his robe, making it hard to see them clearly. When everyone was confused, Song Qing-shu said, "Sangjia, if you can escape with your life today and go back to the Zhen Yin sect to practice hard for 3 years, you might be able to practice the Mahamudra back." When Blood Knife Ancestor and True Jade saw Sangjia's ashen face, they were shocked. Sangjia was the #1 master of the 2nd generation of the Zhen Yin sect, and his Mahamudra Kung Fu could be said to have reached a higher level, but it was actually destroyed by Song Qing-shu's sword. The fat on Sangjia's face trembled, and his voice was hoarse. "What you have given me today, I will definitely return it 100 times in the future. In my opinion, those who say this are incompetent people." Song Qing-shu smiled indifferently. "Not to mention that you don't even know if there will be a day." Sangjia's face turned pale, and Blood Knife Ancestor also felt a chill in his heart. Looking at the Yelu siblings who had been watching with folded arms, he said in a cold voice, "Khitan has received great kindness from Mongolia, and we have always advanced and retreated together. Are you two just going to watch from the side?" The Yelu siblings looked at each other and could see the helplessness in each other's eyes. Originally, they did not want to get involved in this muddy water, but Liao and Mongolia were allies, and now the broken Liao needed to rely on Mongolia in many places. If the Mongolian envoy was killed here, it was afraid that it would damage the relations between the 2 countries. Yelu Nanxian took off her cloak, revealing her enviable tall and proud figure. She slowly pulled out the sword in her hand and pointed it at Song Qing-shu. She looked at him with a wry smile and said, "Mr. Song, people can't help themselves in Jianghu, please." Yelu Qi also stepped forward. When he was young, he received the teachings of the old urchin, Zhou Badong, and had learned most of the Chuanjin sect's orthodox martial arts. Although his martial arts were not as good as his cousin Yelu Nanxian's, within the Yelu imperial family, he was still one of the top experts. Seeing Yelu Nanxian's cold face filled with seriousness, Song Qing-shu put away his wooden sword, revealing a warm smile. Since they are Miss Nanxian's friends, this one naturally will not make things difficult for them. Whether you want to stay or leave, please do as you please. Yellow Nancian was taken aback, noticing that everyone's gazes on her were filled with an inexplicable ambiguity. A rare blush appeared on her face as she sheathed her sword. Looking at Song Qing-shu, there was a hint of gentleness in her eyes. Nancian, thanks, Mr. Song. Su Quan coughed lightly. Looking at Blood Knife Ancestor and the others, she coldly said, "Why are you still here? Are you waiting for the Divine Dragon sect to prepare a feast for you?" Although she really wanted to take this opportunity to kill Blood Knife Ancestor and Master Songjia, to avenge Hong Antong and establish her authority in the sect, Song Qing-shu had already agreed to let them go. Su Quan weighed the importance of establishing her authority and her impression in Song Qing-shu's heart, wisely not refuting Song Qing-shu's words. Watching Blood Knife Ancestor and the others leave in a sorry state, Yellow Nancian thought to herself, this trip not only helped the Mongolian side, but also indirectly destroyed Ali Buj and Hong Li's plot. At the same time, she also completed Su Yin's task of protecting Su Quan. It was really a rewarding trip. She looked at Song Qing-shu with a hint of gratitude and said, "We brother and sister also have to return a great Liao. We will bid farewell here until we meet again. See you later." Song Qing-shu nodded with a smile. Watching Song Qing-shu watch Yellow Nancian leave, Su Quan giggled and said, "Her shadow has disappeared for so long. Since you can't bear to let her go, why not make her stay as a guest?" Song Qing-shu was startled, smiled bitterly, and said, "No way. I was thinking about a question. How long can you be the sect leader?" At this time, the Divine Dragon sect disciples in the hall finally reacted. They all knelt down and shouted, "We respectfully request the sect leader to ascend to the throne. May the sect leader enjoy immortal fortune and live as long as the heavens." Su Quan smiled sweetly. Holding Song Qing-shu's hand with one hand, she said, "Come with me." Holding Song Qing-shu's hand, the two of them walked up the stairs step by step, arriving in front of Hong Antong's throne. Su Quan sat down naturally and said in a sweet voice, "Rise." "Thank you, sect leader." Although sect leader Hong was wrong in the past, but he has done a great service to the sect. Come, collect sect leader Hong's body and bury it the next day. We solemnly obey sect leader's decree. Many Divine Dragon sect disciples cursed endlessly in their hearts. In the past, it was clearly her and sect leader Hong who wantonly harmed the elderly, but now she pushed all the blame to Hong Antong. "There's one more thing." Su Quan looked at Song Qing-shu next to her with a smile. "Pass down my order. For now on this Mr. Song is our Divine Dragon sect's most distinguished guest. Seeing him is the same as seeing the sect leader. His order is the sect leader's order." Most of the young Divine Dragon sect disciples were Su Quan's confidants. They did not feel anything, but the rest of the elderly sneered incessantly in their hearts. Her husband has just died, yet she pushed the adulterer out so quickly. However, now that the general situation has been settled, these people did not dare to have any other thoughts. Hearing Su Quan's soft and charming voice, their bodies and bones somewhat softened. Their hearts were filled with endless envy. This Song Qing-shu is really lucky in love. He can wantonly enjoy this kind of kindness. Right now the army is outside. Everyone must perform your duties and strictly guard each stronghold. As for the specific matters, I will pass down the order later. Looking at the Divine Dragon sect disciples respectfully retreating below the stairs, Su Quan felt as if she was in a dream. She did not expect that her wish would come true so quickly. She originally thought that it would take a lifetime. Thinking of this, Su Quan looked at Song Qing-shu, her eyes full of affection. Being looked at by such a beautiful and charming woman with this kind of eyes, no man would not be moved. Song Qing-shu was proud of himself, but he secretly exclaimed in his heart, did Su Quan really have love for him? Perhaps not. Right now, strong enemies were everywhere. She needed a strong man, and he was more in line with her requirements in all aspects. That was why she appeared to be so duty-bound. If it was a young and inexperienced boy, perhaps he would be confused by her affectionate eyes, but Song Qing-shu had already passed this stage. With one glance, he could see through Su Quan's careful thoughts. If it was before, perhaps Song Qing-shu would have a grudge in his heart, but now he had slowly become accustomed to the rules of this world. Su Quan's choice was understandable, not to mention that Su Quan was not only a beautiful woman, but also a smart and mature woman. Getting along with such a woman, presumably there would not be any unnecessary troubles. Right now, the strong enemies have not retreated. Divine Dragon Sect's vitality is greatly damaged. Do you have any good idea? A sentence that could not be any more normal. But when Su Quan said it with a coquettish and charming nasal voice, it was particularly seductive. There is a way, but I don't know if Madame Hong dares to do it or not. All along, Song Qing-shu had been thinking about how to solve the Divine Dragon Sect predicament. Not long after he arrived at Divine Dragon Sect, he received inspiration from various emissaries and came up with a solution. Chapter 288. Don't call me that in the future. Su Quan's face darkened as she pursed her lips and said. Song Qing-shu was confused when he suddenly realized. He laughed and said, It's my fault. How about I call you Sister Su in the future? Is there a younger brother like you? Su Quan glanced at Song Qing-shu's hand on her waist. She turned her body and her eyelashes trembled slightly. I've always been bullied by you. I don't want to be your sister. Then I won't call you Madame Hong. How about calling me Madam? Song Qing-shu leaned forward and looked at the delicate and cute earrings in front of him. He gently licked them. It's up to you. Su Quan trembled and pushed him away. Let's talk about the method you mentioned. Speaking of proper business, Song Qing-shu's expression immediately became serious. He said in a low voice, Now that Divine Dragon Cult has missed the best time to set up defense, Hong Li's army has penetrated deep into the hinterland. In addition, the cult is in chaos. Not only has Divine Dragon Cult's vitality been greatly damaged, but the people are also in a panic. If they confront Hong Li's army now, they will definitely lose. Then what should we do? Su Quan had also thought of these problems. A trace of worry appeared on her face. Song Qing-shu smiled faintly. Didn't Hong Li say that he would retreat if he handed you over in order to cause internal chaos in Divine Dragon Island? Now that they have achieved their goal, this condition has become a hindrance. You mean to hand me over? Su Quan looked sad. Never mind. As long as you say the word, I will pass Divine Dragon Cult to Fong Yi. Then I will personally go to Shengjing City to ask Hong Li for forgiveness. I just don't know if Hong Li will keep his promise and withdraw. I heard that this Bao Qin Wang is very lustful. I am also quite pretty. If I try to curry favor with him, I think this old pervert will let Divine Dragon Island go. Before she finished her sentence, she was already on the verge of tears. Although he knew that her expression was fake, her pitiful appearance still made Song Qing-shu's heart ache. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. You know that's not what I mean. Who knew that when she heard him say this, Su Quan suddenly became even more sad. Tears rolled down her cheeks uncontrollably. Why are you really crying? Song Qing-shu quickly tried to help her wipe her tears. Su Quan leaned to the side and avoided Song Qing-shu's hand without a trace. She stretched out her slender fingers and wiped the tears off her face. She forced a smile and said, Of course I knew you wouldn't do that. I was going to pretend to squeeze out some tears to arouse your desire to protect me. Who knew that I would suddenly think that it wasn't easy for me to choose a man? If you really planned to do that, wouldn't I have trusted the wrong person? The more I thought about it, the sadder I felt. My tears started to fall. Song Qing-shu couldn't tell if she was showing her true feelings or another high-level seduction technique, but he believed her subconsciously. After all, people couldn't live with a mask all the time. Gently hugging Su Quan's shoulders, Song Qing-shu said, Don't worry, I will definitely protect you. He then told Su Quan his plan in detail. If Song Qing-shu didn't exist, Su Quan choosing to sacrifice herself at this time would be the stupidest thing to do. After all, the other side had already achieved their goal of causing internal strife in Divine Dragon Cult. If they also detained Su Quan, Divine Dragon Cult would be like a group of dragons without a leader. They only needed to send a detachment of troops to completely eradicate Divine Dragon Cult. But with Song Qing-shu as a middleman, the situation was different. After all, Hong Li's condition was to hand over Su Quan, and then he would retreat. Song Qing-shu was the special envoy of the imperial court. As long as he firmly held on to this point, the army outside the island would fall into a dilemma. No matter how tense the relationship between Xinjing and the imperial court was, at the moment, they had not officially broken off. The generals who went to battle this time did not dare to offend Song Qing-shu, the imperial envoy. At this time, Hong Li and Kangxi's nerves were very tense. If they made a mistake and the two sides went to war ahead of time, no one would dare to bear this responsibility. Will you go with me to Xinjing to see Hong Li? Hearing Song Qing-shu's words, Su Quan subconsciously shook her head. I'm very grateful that you have this intention. The generals outside the island may not dare to do anything to you, but you have already offended Hong Li last time. If he sees you again, he might kill you as a sacrifice. No, it's too dangerous for you to go. If I don't go, who will protect your safety? Song Qing-shu's words made Su Quan choke. Because Fu Qinggan was killed, Hong Li will not let you go, Song Qing-shu continued to explain. But after all, Fu Qinggan was not killed by you. With me as a mediator, it is not impossible to protect you. Oh, a pair of tender and red lips pressed against his. After a long time, the two separated. Su Quan's long and charming eyes were full of spring water. She passionately raised her head to look at Song Qing-shu and unconsciously pursed her lips. I find that I'm a little in love with you. Just a little? It sounds quite sad. Song Qing-shu touched his lips. There was still a remnant of the beauty's warmth on them. Su Quan smiled tenderly and turned around, very naturally breaking away from his embrace. No matter what, I am a seductive demoness. If I'm so easily captured by you like a little girl, that would be too embarrassing. What do I want your heart for? I only care about your body. Song Qing-shu teased. Bah! Su Quan felt her cheeks become a little hot. She looked at Song Qing-shu with an extremely seductive gaze. If you can obtain my heart and my body, isn't that better? Looking at Su Quan's renewed vigor and radiant appearance, Song Qing-shu felt that this kind of game was quite interesting. He could not help but reach out to hold her smooth, jade-like chin. Su Quan hesitated for a moment, but did not dodge. Brother Song. At this moment, Fang Yi's voice came from outside the door. The two of them subconsciously returned to normal and sat upright. Once Fang Yi entered the hall, she saw the two of them sitting on the cult master's throne. Although they were not that close, she could still feel the ambiguity between the two of them, especially when she saw the hint of love between Su Quan's brows. Fang Yi felt very uncomfortable. What? You don't recognize me now that you have Brother Song? Su Quan looked at Fang Yi with a smile, but there was a trace of coldness in her eyes. This subordinate does not dare. Greetings, cult master. Su Quan had accumulated power for a long time, so Fang Yi subconsciously felt a little scared. In the end, Song Qing-shu could not stand it anymore and asked, Fang Yi, what did you come to find me for? Although she had skin contact with Song Qing-shu, Fang Yi could feel that the relationship between her and Song Qing-shu was not as close as she had imagined. For a moment, she was somewhat disheartened. Her eyes slightly drooped, and her expression could not be seen clearly. I could not find the young princess on the island. After asking many times, I found out that she was sent out to carry out a mission and was kidnapped by a group of mysterious people. I want to save her. Mu Jai in pain? Thinking of the innocent and pure young princess in the original work, Song Qing-shu was a little absent-minded for a moment. But now he had to solve the urgent problem of Divine Dragon Island, so he was afraid that he could not take care of her. I speculate that this group of mysterious people is not from Prince Mu's mansion. They are Wu Sangui's subordinates. No matter who they are, the young princess should not be in danger for the time being. You can continue to investigate from these two clues. Seeing that Song Qing-shu did not have the slightest intention to accompany her, Fang Yi sighed inwardly and nodded. Okay. At this time, Su Quan, who was at the side, said, Fang, choose a few experts from the cult to go with you and take care of her on the way. Thank you, cult master. Seeing Fang Yi's dejected look when she left, Su Quan frowned and looked at Song Qing-shu. Isn't she your woman? Why do you not seem to like her? Who can say for sure about matters of the heart? Song Qingshu's expression looked very melancholic. He said in annoyance, "Speaking of which, it's all your fault. If you didn't force her to serve you in bed, things wouldn't have become like this." Io. Su Quan chuckled. "If you really don't want her with your martial arts, can she still force you? That's why men often regret their impulses," Song Qingshu said awkwardly. Recalling the situation when she was eavesdropping outside the inn, a rose-like blush appeared on Su Quan's snow-white skin. She could not help but silently criticize, "Come on. At that time, I saw that you quite enjoyed Feng Yi's fresh and tender body. Otherwise, why would you use so much force on a certain nameless island outside Divine Dragon Island, in the commander's tent of Shengjing's expeditionary army?" Li Shuyao looked at the young man who suddenly appeared in front of him and was startled. However, he did not panic and call for the guards. Instead, he looked at the young man and asked, "Who are you, Your Excellency?" Song Qingshu inwardly admired his calmness and replied, "This one is Song Qingshu. Greetings, Lord Li." Li Shuyao had heard many descriptions of Song Qingshu's martial arts, but he did not expect him to have the ability to hide from thousands of troops and stealthily sneak into his tent. "How would I dare? Lord Song is deeply favored by His Majesty. How would I dare accept such a great courtesy?" Thinking of the news brought back by Yu Zhenzi, he was bewildered. Song Qingshu most likely did not come with good intentions this time. "Lord Li is too polite. Li Yuanji and I are very good friends. You are her uncle, so I naturally have to pay you the courtesy of a junior," Song Qingshu said with a smile. A smile appeared on Li Shuyao's face when he thought of his eccentric little niece. He hurriedly and politely invited Song Qingshu to take a seat. His previous worries quickly vanished like smoke in thin air. "I didn't expect Li Kashio to secretly latch on his such a thigh." Li Shuyao sighed in his heart. He and Li Kashio were cousins. They were both famous generals of Liaodong's border defense under Bao Prince Hongli's command. The Li family had long realized that there would be a battle between Hong Li and Kangxi sooner or later, so they made early arrangements to let Li Kashio find an opportunity to offend Hong Li and be transferred to the Great Wall to rely on Kangxi. Li Shuyao stayed outside the Great Wall and very quickly became Hong Li's confidant. In this way, no matter who obtained the world in the future, the Li family would be in an invincible position. Listening to Song Qingshu's introduction, Li Shuyao took it for granted that he was Li Kashio's future son-in-law. Naturally, he treated Song Qingshu as one of his own. The two of them exchanged greetings for a while and quickly got to the main topic. After listening to Song Qingshu, Li Shuyao's expression was quite strange. "Nephew Song, you should know that Su Quan is just an excuse. Now that the Divine Dragon Island's power is gone, we only need to wait until tomorrow morning when our three armies will launch an all-out attack. The Divine Dragon cult's destruction is imminent. You want me to bide my time at this time? It's difficult. The Divine Dragon cult is insignificant. It's not worth mentioning. Lord, they must be clear about what Bao Prince will do next after obtaining the Divine Dragon cult, right?" Song Qingshu didn't take it seriously and asked in reply. Li Shuyao remained silent. Chapter 289. As a high-ranking general under Hong Li, Li Shuyao naturally knew Hong Li's plan. Hong Li saw that Kangxi's power was becoming more and more solid, and knew that if he didn't take action, he would probably be a peaceful prince for the rest of his life. His previous plan was to unite with Wu Sangue and form a marriage alliance with him. Then the two armies would join together and attack Yanjing from Shanhai Pass. As long as Yanjing was breached, the imperial court's control over other vast areas would naturally be settled. Unfortunately, during Fu Kangen's diplomatic mission to Shanhai Pass, Wei Xiaobao and Princess Janning died mysteriously. Although Hong Li and Wu Sangue guessed that it was Kangxi's plot, their relationship had already fallen to a freezing point. Recently, the Mongolians took the initiative to stop the war and negotiate. Under the instigation of the new Fujin, Hong Li decided to completely subdue the Divine Dragon Island and unite with the Golden Snake Battalion in Shandong under the new Fujin to completely control the Bohai Sea. Then they would disembark from Tianjin Tonggu and directly attack Yanjing. Many of Hong Li's knowledgeable subordinates pointed out that the truce was just the Mongolians' plan to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. If they rashly started a war with Kangxi, the Mongolians would reap the benefits. But Hong Li had made up his mind. He was confident that his northern defense line could hold off the Mongolians for some time. Then he would use the Golden Snake Battalion in Shandong to attract Kangxi's attention. When Kangxi sent troops to suppress the rebellion and the capital was empty, he would directly attack the Yellow Dragon by sea. But he didn't want to explain these thoughts to his subordinates. All these plans were based on controlling the Divine Dragon Island's navy. Therefore, Hong Li used the excuse of revenge for Fu Qinggan, hoping to deceive Kangxi. Seeing the uncertainty on Li Shiyao's face, Song Qingshu smiled and said, "Lord Li is serving under Prince Bao, while Yuanji's father is serving under Kangxi. Logically speaking, no matter who wins in the end, the glory of the Li family will be guaranteed. But what if the Mongolians are the only winners in the end?" Song Qingshu's words hit Li Shiyao's heart. This had always been Li Shiyao's concern. Therefore, he was also a staunch anti-war supporter in Hong Li's camp. Kangxi has been paying attention to Prince Bao's movements. That's why he sent me to act according to the circumstances. Divine Dragon Island is an important chess piece to maintain the balance between the two sides. If Prince Bao occupies the island, Kangxi will certainly not sit by and a war will break out. Song Qingshu added, "But the army has already set out. We can't just return empty-handed," Li Shiyao said solemnly. "Didn't Prince Bao claim to be seeking revenge for Fu Kong'an? Then I will send the new sect master of Divine Dragon Island, Su Quan, to Shengjing. Won't he have a way out?" Song Qingshu said. Li Shiyao pondered. This is the best of both worlds. Moreover, if the prince controls the sect leader of the Divine Dragon Island, it is equivalent to indirectly controlling the Divine Dragon cult, so he won't blame me for anything. All right, as long as Nephew Song hands over Su Quan, I will handle the work of the other two armies. We will not move for the time being. Wait until you go to Shengjing and see Prince Bao. Then His Highness will decide whether to fight or make peace. Thank you, Master Li. Song Qingshu was overjoyed. The next day, Li Shiyao, Zhao Hui, and Hai Lancha gathered together. After a discussion, they decided to allocate 3 warships from the Navy. Then, they would select martial arts experts from their respective bodyguards to accompany Song Qingshu and Su Quan to Shengjing. "Madam, you are about to enter the tiger's mouth. Are you afraid?" Song Qingshu asked Su Quan with a smile as he looked out the window and saw the densely packed soldiers standing on the deck. "Anyway, they have already handed their lives over to you. Do as you see fit." In fact, Su Quan was still full of fear for this journey. The feeling of not being able to control her own fate and being at the mercy of others was very bad. If it wasn't because of her trust in Song Qingshu, she would never take such a risk. "Aren't you afraid that I will lie to you and sell you out?" The two of them were very close to each other. Song Qingshu could smell the orchid-like scent on Su Quan's body. "Are you willing to do that?" Su Quan's eyes were full of smiles. "I'm a little reluctant." Song Qingshu pulled a lock of Su Quan's hair and sniffed. But no matter how beautiful a woman is, it cannot compare to a man's future. Su Quan looked at him in a daze, as if she was trying to distinguish the truth from the lies. But soon, her eyes curved into a crescent moon. "If I can help you exchange for a better future, I am willing." Looking at the enchanting woman in front of him, Song Qingshu was startled. He was rather regretful. He felt as if he was playing with fire. If he really fell in love with her, it would be too dangerous. The trip to Shengjing is really hard to predict. Song Qingshu sighed. Now that the world's heroes are rising and vying for the throne in the Central Plains, the Divine Dragon Order is destined to become a vassal of one of the forces. No man can resist Madam's charm. Thinking that one day Madam is destined to be taken in as a concubine by some hero, I feel a little unwilling. Su Quan, on the other hand, did not think that far ahead. She was more worried about her own fate after the trip to Xinjiang. Although Song Qing-shu was highly skilled in martial arts, he would not be able to protect her in Hong Li's headquarters. However, after hearing Song Qing-shu's words, she was surprised to find that this man seemed to have an ambition that was different from the ordinary martial artists. Su Quan's eyes brightened, and a strange expression burst out. If Gongzi is willing, you can treat the Divine Dragon Island as your home at any time. Everyone in the family listens to Madam's orders. How can I dare to treat it as my home? Song Qing-shu smiled faintly. The expression on his face was difficult to understand. Su Quan was a smart woman. She naturally knew what he was worried about. After hesitating for a moment, she seemed to have made a final decision. The Divine Dragon Island has 3 treasures. I don't know if Gongzi knows about them. Oh, how come I don't know? Where are the 3 treasures? Song Qing-shu sat up straight and became interested. The first one is the leopard embryo tendon-changing pill. The Divine Dragon sect can ensure the absolute loyalty of its subordinates through it. Su Quan pursed her lips and smiled. Using medicine to control, it is not a long-term solution. However, in the short term, the effect is immediate. It can indeed be regarded as a treasure. Song Qing-shu had always been curious about the principle of the leopard embryo tendon-changing pill. Most of the purpose of this trip was for it. He was thinking about how to get the formula. However, Su Quan smiled extremely charmingly. Do you want to hear how the poison and antidote are made? You tell me so easily? Song Qing-shu was stunned. He thought that Su Quan would use it as her amulet. I was prepared to use this formula to trade with Hong Li as a last resort. However, I suddenly changed my mind just now. Su Quan looked at Song Qing-shu. Her eyes were full of tenderness. She pouted coquettishly. Do you want to hear it or not? Of course. Song Qing-shu did not know how to respond to her. Foreign's gift is really too valuable. Is this considered valuable? The corners of Su Quan's mouth curved into a beautiful arc. She stretched out her hand and crooked her finger at Song Qing-shu. Come closer. It's all Hong Li's people outside. I don't want to let that lecherous Wang Ye take advantage of it. Song Qing-shu turned to the side and felt Su Quan's soft lips breathing into his ear, as well as her slightly scattered breathing. He only felt his heart flutter. Gongzi, do you remember? Su Quan did not expect that her voice would be so delicate. How could I dare to forget Foreign's generous gift? Song Qing-shu felt his body was unbearably hot. He knew that if he continued this ambiguous game, Su Quan would take the initiative. He was about to get up when Su Quan reached into the crook of his arm and hugged it tightly. I'm not a tiger. Why are you hiding? I haven't heard about the second treasure yet. Seeing Song Qing-shu's slightly embarrassed appearance, Su Quan was very pleased. She had used all kinds of seductive techniques on him before, but they had all failed. This time, she completely gave up on those complicated methods. Instead, she used a woman's natural charm. As expected, the other could not control himself. Feeling the plump sensation on his arm, Song Qing-shu blushed. The second treasure must be even more valuable. Of course, this is related to a great treasure outside the Manchurian Qing Pass. There are only a few people in the world who know of this secret. A trace of pride appeared on Su Quan's face. 42 Chapter Sutra? Song Qing-shu asked. Su Quan was startled. She suddenly remembered the various things in Xinjiang. She tugged at him in annoyance. I almost forgot. Last time in Xinjiang, your fake 42 Chapter Sutra made me miserable. Weren't we enemies at that time? Song Qing-shu twisted his waist to dodge as he grabbed Su Quan's naughty little hand. Then what about the third treasure? Her wrist was firmly held by Song Qing-shu. Feeling the heat from his big hand, Su Quan sank into silence. In my heart, the last treasure is much more valuable than the previous 2. I'm still hesitating whether or not to give it to you. Since it's so difficult, forget it. Song Qing-shu looked down. The skin under Su Quan's collar could be seen clearly. He did not know when it started, but there was a trace of rosy red on it. Su Quan seemed to have made a great decision. She slowly raised her head and stared at him with her beautiful eyes. Her long eyelashes trembled slightly. Her eyes were clear and sparkling, and there was a trace of mysterious light in the depths of her eyes. She said word by his ear, "The third treasure is me." Having already reached this point, Su Quan was very worried that Song Qing-shu would mercilessly reject her. She did not give him a chance to reply. Her beautiful red lips pressed on his ear, and she lightly licked his earlobe. Although he already had some guesses in his heart, he was still a little surprised when it came to it. A wave of numbness came over him. Song Qing-shu asked in a low voice, "Didn't you say that I would first obtain your heart?" The future of this trip to Shengjing is unpredictable. I'm worried that I won't be able to protect my body. Su Quan's warm and moist lips gradually moved down. Her entire body was like a beautiful snake, half lying in Song Qing-shu's arms. Song Qing-shu opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but Su Quan had already grabbed his hand and slid it into her collar. "It seems to be broad daylight right now. What does that matter? The soldiers outside will hear. Are you worried that Hongli will find out that you've taken my head and harm you? How can I be afraid of him?" "Shh, don't talk." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.